It's funny. I think I ran into Danny Miller. This was a while ago, but I wasn't wearing a hat somewhere, and he goes, "I didn't recognize you at first because you weren't wearing a hat." I feel like because I'm outside a lot and I get burned real easily, so I'll always usually wear a hat, but it's not for like any weird reason.
Well, he burns easily, and so he's welcome back into the Two Balls and a Mics and the Open Football Studios. The last time we were all congregated here, we spoke about some stuff that ended up being true, and I think that everybody kind of is aware of that. If you're clicking on this, if you're listening to this, and I think that it would just be wise of us to just say, hey, this is just a conversation, another conversation that we're gonna have, because that's what that was. It was a good talk amongst us about things that are going to be happening, not happening. And I think the overall discussion was a good one. I really enjoyed it. And I think just conflicting schedules and just life got in the way. Soccer season is on the horizon here in San Diego. So I think it's a good place to start back up with some more talks and conversations and just kind of see where that leads if you're good with that. If not, I mean, very short recording and podcast.
Absolutely. No, I'm pumped on it. I feel since I moved here in 2020 and worked for Loyal the 2 years, and then now being freelance and going in and out 3 seasons with San Diego Wave, in my second season I believe, or 2.5 seasons with San Diego Sockers. I was talking to Jerry Jimenez the other day after the Sockers game, and I told him, I said, I think you and I are, I think like 2 of maybe 3 people that have worked for nearly each soccer team in the city at one point.
Yeah,
that's true.
In
That's
one
very
fashion
true.
or other, like, because obviously I've only done some freelance work for SDFC, but and he like looked at me and he's like, oh my God, you're right. So I think like that's been cool, obviously, to now known you guys for almost 4 years, and I feel like the soccer community here is pretty small.
Yeah.
It's very small.
It really
Very
is. Like
small.
if they ask us to play in the tournaments, in the same tournament that we find across us in Chicano futsal, Ben Nichols, who I guess is an excellent goalkeeper as well, participate. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting. Shout out another member of the community here locally.
I think he was a little disappointed to know that he's not the best goalkeeper in the soccer
Oh,
community.
so Ben was better.
Who, me? And then me? I mean, I didn't get scored on the one-on-ones in.
His team also crapped on us 7-1. So.
Yeah, but he had a team to do that when it came down to it.
We had a team.
No, he actually, after I stopped that one highlight that I put with that legs and just this barrel of a human being just being at the right place at the right time, he was like, yeah, like I could have stopped that. Any shot that goes right at you. And so I like that. I like that banter that I had with him. I was like, all right, cool, making it spicy. But no, it's very cool to see people who are growing and decided to stay. And I think that's the important part, where I think there is a value that people are seeing with what's here, and want to make sure that that value is still nurtured and brought up correctly. Since the announcement that there was perhaps a MLS team, Chivas' mouth was on the ground, like, oh my God, just like that. Since then,
Any other shit you got to drop?
I came with no breaking news this time.
okay, that's fine. It's okay.
Sorry.
It's gonna
anyone
be a regular
expecting
cool
something.
chat. Not on the beach this time. I forget about that.
that was-
That
that
was
was
cool.
the
That was
first
fun. Shout out
ever?
Esteban.
Esteban Toscano.
Esteban
yeah.
Toscano
Helps us
setting that
out.
up.
Was that the first time I was ever on the pod?
I think so.
Yeah.
It was right after your marathon with the locals, like a week or 2 after, and we were like, we're not going to get anything out of him. And nope, we had a great conversation after too. So, I think that being able to stay here and like you did, and have the opportunity to ask hey, show you soccer in San Diego. I think we didn't talk about this before, but I think that's a good place to start, right? We took you to different places. We took you to TJ for some tacos, for some exploration of just the soccer culture in this region, right? What was that like for you, just kind of experiencing what soccer in San Diego really meant? Because you went on an adventure. You captured some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I think anytime I explore, and really, kudos to you guys for kind of taking me these places that I probably would never have gone. I think it shows how much this sport means to every type of person, I think, is the best way to do it. Like, growing up in Wisconsin in the Midwest, baseball was that sport in our city, but like, you can't play, pick up baseball all the time with a bunch of people, and I think, I remember mentioning to you guys during the breaks in the pickup games in TJ, all the kids run on the field.
Yeah.
And they're playing for whatever the breaks, and they're playing really until like the teams come back on the pitch and they kick them off. I think the other element is like it doesn't matter how sexy the environment or building or surface is, and it doesn't seem like that's ever really a topic for people to really talk about. I think it's just like the love of the sport. There was, I think, truck drivers getting off work or probably routing it was so interesting to me to see how woven into their life, and I know that's an SDFC reference right there.
Woven. Okay.
And I think the other part of that with a project that I did do with SDFC and going around, and I knew you were part of that too, and taking me around places of San Diego. One of which I live in Golden Hill neighborhood, and I had no idea that pickup soccer was happening in Golden Hill every Friday night. And then meeting that woman who said, "Hey, my dad was the one running this league, and then he passed away, and I've been running this league on my own." And like this kid who I think that's the cool thing is, like for the men's league that we went to go watch, all the wives and girlfriends are there, and then all the kids, and it's like they might be there for 4 hours just hanging out. Yeah, I think some of this is mixed in with a couple other, but that kid couldn't have been happier, whether he's playing soccer by himself in the dirt. And I think that's what is really kind of something about this city that I've really grown to love is, I know everybody talks about the diversity, but truly I've never lived in a more diverse city than here. Maybe LA a little bit, but I feel like LA is very, if it's 30 minutes away, you're not really going there. And I think here people are willing to travel, and people are, especially to play soccer, even if it's pickup soccer. Like on the way down here, I think I was on the 15, and I it's like there's soccer happening right off the freeway, So I think that's the cool part to me, Bridge Barcata too, those guys. And it's like, I think one of the coolest things I did with them was followed them for I think it was like a 7 a.m. session at Balboa Park. Yeah, right there. So, I mean, that's I think the beauty of this city, and I think that's what a lot of the teams, and I think, if we want to talk about SDFC first, I think I do give them a lot of credit for what they're doing now, because the amount of resources that they're pouring into to do these community events all across town, like that takes, I feel like that's a lot of times things that people in the front office talk about wanting to do, but don't really get the resources from the top level people or the buy-in from ownership to fund those types of things. And to see them say, "Hey, we're going to commit to doing this once a month, if not more."
It's actually insane.
like every other week almost.
Yeah, and I mean it's not a big, it's not a big crew of people. So I know the energy, and I talked to DK and Jerry about this for SDFC, and they're probably wearing 6 different hats when they're putting these things on, but I haven't been to one personally. I know you guys were just out at the one. I heard you guys talking about it, but even as just somebody that has lived here and seen the way that, like they're weaving in artists, they're weaving in skate culture, like, that I think those are all things that, regardless of what somebody would think is the benefit in real time, I think you're going to see that benefit at that first game when you have all these people that already feel connected to this team from these events. And I think that's something that I really give them kudos to, because I've been at a lot of teams and startup teams where you say you want to do this, and you maybe do one event or you maybe do 2 events. So,
and I know that it was a priority for this front office to do this, so much so that, because we've been trying and we've been respectful of that team that you're talking about, right? Like it takes a village, and this village is very small yet to where they need to be in a year. Like, and so they really took the time to plan this street flow event, the first one, and then really come together with the rest of the initial portion of this Chrome Ball tour. The bandwidth that they used for it took a toll on the bandwidth for what they had planned or what they needed to have planned for 2024. So I know that pushed a lot of that to the side. And again, this is stuff that's been told to me from the top, and it's something that it's refreshing to be able to see that and not have that pushback. And I think it's because there are people in there who didn't have an unlimited budget, who knew things that they wanted to do, and they're just pushing towards that. And that, again, that's credit again to those individuals that are there, and hopefully they are teaching people what this city is about. And so far, I think that the biggest impact, and I think you saw at Chiva too, is the communities are coming out to these events. Like you went to Oceanside.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Poway. I'm not familiar with Escondido, and the community was really reflected in that.
And I'll tell you why the community is really showing out. Like you mentioned those pickup games on Friday nights. And what that really is for the people, the raza, the people that show out, it's a break from life in general. Like you go, you play soccer, you love it. You have a beer or two with your pals. You eat some tacos from the señora making the tortillas a mano and everything, right? And we saw it at La Canchita, right? People take their 12-pack of Modelos and they play a game. They're drinking while watching other people play. They eat some tacos. They sober up. They go back home on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
You know, it's a break from your regular routine, your 9 to 5, going to work, waking up at 5, going to work, being tired. Like some people are tired. They go home. These people go and they want to play. They want to have that time interaction. And SDFC is doing a good job in bringing that type of culture in, right, where you're going to be able to go buy food. You're going to be able to watch soccer, play soccer. You're going to be able to do different events. You're going to see artists, skateboarders, stuff like that. So I think these events are very unique because it's giving people a break from everything else that they've seen. So props to SDFC again for these events. And I think that's a big reason why the community is showing up.
I think the community is being seen. Like I'll include myself in there because again, there's room for that, right? Like I can't necessarily separate myself as much as I want to be this journalist, blah, 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 blah. Like I live here. I drink the water. I eat the food from this. Like this is who I am to the core. And I think that if it's continued this way, you're going to build a loyal fan base. Jeez.
Oh, man.
You're gonna
call this a pun episode.
All right. Yeah, no, you're gonna build that fan base that will show up. And again, that's always been my just hope, is that when it comes down to it, the city of San Diego is represented well in a way that LA doesn't feel like they can just come in, whichever representation of that is, and just show San Diego up once again in another way. I mean,
and it still may take some time. I mean, the first season, maybe LA will still show out. Look at LAFC. How long did it take for them to win their first championship, to really rally everything up?
But like, I'm talking about like the fan bases and like, you know, filling up that section and not being quieted down by an impressive side that LA will bring down.
The thing is that on SDFC or is that on the supporter groups to fill that section up?
Ryan?
I mean, this is actually something I talked with Jerry Jimenez after that soccer's game. It was a topic of this because I asked him like, "Hey, how's you know, more or less like the pressure to build that section out? Because that's like almost 5,000 fans on that supporter side at Snapdragon.
Yeah,
and I mean, you guys can help me answer this too because you've been here. But in my experience, and I know COVID sort of affected the growth of 109 with Loyal at Torero. But I remember utilizing that energy to create the energy throughout the whole stadium. And then people that weren't in that section would say like, we come because of 109.
Yeah.
You know, and then on social, I realized like, hey, if we showcase this energy, people that are, you know, running into us on social or other San Diegans or right, these other people, you know, that like, whoever's represented in 109 is probably resharing this, and then all their followers are seeing this. And that was sort of my game plan. So, you know, I think it's hard with SDFC. I think, right, they've gone away from like, right, the supporter rally to now the Chrome Ball tour. And I also think that people aren't going to really sign up in droves to be a supporter when it's a year away still. I think, you know, when you're getting players signed or you're getting a month out, 2 months out, preseason games are starting, I think it's going to happen in droves. I almost said waves, but I wanted to stop this.
Wow,
But
that's great.
you know, like something I told Jerry, and I was like, dude, like, don't allow yourself to feel the pressure, right? Because like, say ownership or whoever higher ups or ticket sales people are gonna get a monthly, right, like statement of like, hey, what the growth is every month for supporters, and if it doesn't grow at the pace that I think they're hoping it to grow exponentially, it's like it's okay. And I think too, part of what I think San Diego reacts to sometimes is that element that you see with Dodgers and Padres. Like, I think because there's so many Dodger fans that come down to Petco, the prideful San Diegans are like, no, you're not going to show out in our stadium. So right, that's why there's fights. That's why there's all this animosity, everything. But I think a little element of that, right? If like when Galaxy supporters come or LAFC supporters come, and we see it with Wave and with ACFC. Like ACFC supporters are loud, and they'll even say like, "Hey, we're louder than the Sirens," and that's no shot to the Sirens, but like ACFC is a really good supporter section.
They brought it. They brought it in that top section where they put them. You heard them just as clearly in that press box.
Yeah, so I think some of that has to just play itself out, but I don't doubt. I mean, it's like the same feeling I had when people were worried that Wave wasn't going to sell out that first game at Snapdragon, and I think just seeing what NWSL was and just kind of paying attention to it, and I was like, this is gonna. I don't know why people are worried that this is gonna not sell out, and I think for SDFC, like if you told me, hey, can you picture what that first game is gonna look like, and I'm like, that place is gonna be rocking.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and I think that's why I told Jerry, I was like, dude, just know that if you do what you guys are doing, like that's going to take care of itself, and you're going to be there on that first game just going like, holy shit. And but I think it's tough because I think there is nothing else to focus on but you know, like probably how much we're growing social numbers and how much memberships we're selling, and especially okay, how many supporters do we have this month? Oh, we only added 20. Or well, we only added 100. You know, like why aren't we adding 500 more? We have 4,000, 5,000 seats to fill, and it's like I think, you know, hopefully they have that, you know, structure in place where they're not really too worried yet. Because I mean, it's a year out.
Here's the thing, right? And we've seen it going to Cholos, and Tony, we've seen it when last time we went to Tijuana with the Masacre. It was maybe 100 of them. They scatter around the whole section. And he just amplified the sound. It's not all of them up together in the front looking like a little crowd like that. Just spread it out. Give yourself space within the section. It looks more filled up, and it's still going to amplify the sound. So if there's strategies to it, and for sure, and it's something that they might have to look into if they're not going to pack the section out. There's people that can buy tickets to that section that don't care about supporters, and they're like, this is a cheap ticket. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, right. I
mean, without knowing that it's a standing room only seat.
I remember you see that at Wave, and I feel like on the big games, it's cool to see people that you know are not part of the Sirens, but are in that section feed off the energy that the Sirens are providing, and then almost like create their own energy. Something that I'd be curious, and I know there'd be, you know, it's probably like a security thing too, but like for Wave and knowing there's so many young girls, I was like, I would almost love to create like a safe section, and maybe you put like the parent section next to them, but it's like you make a section that's literally just
for kids.
Those kids, and like
that'd be pretty dope.
And you have maybe you have like the parent leaders at the front, you know, kind of like organizing the cheers and everything, but like also like how cool would it be to see like a 13-year-old girl like up on a platform like leading the cheers for a whole section of young girls. And that's something that I remember I feel like I've told Wave too many times where they're like, yeah, like we got it, Ryan. So Weston, I don't know what this is.
Look at this one right here.
Just throwing that out there. I know there's a lot of work involved in something like that, but I think there are opportunities in games. I just ran into another team promoting, I think it's from the Pro Volleyball Federation, and they're promoting like Girls Night Out. And I'm like,
yeah,
like,
great.
I was like, that's just like a simple tagline, but it's like, you know, if it's like, kids night out or something, or maybe you just test this on like one specific game and you utilize, those soccer clubs around San Diego to like, hey, we're all going to create fan supporter sections.
Yeah.
And you make it fun. I think it would be, that's what I would love to see Wave, the evolution of that supporter section is like, there's been so much onus on the Sirens to carry everything about
Yes.
the supporters that it would be great to get that like multiplying energy of like, and I just think it would look awesome. So I don't know if that's something STFC could do where it's like, feel like you could come up with some like cool slogans for like a kids supporter group, but if it's like,
you just gave the Soccers an idea too.
I mean, yeah. Hey, don't look at me. I'm only the broadcast
You
guy.
mentioned
Mr. Craig.
volleyball. It goes, go Mojo. Let's win a set.
Oh, jeez. Is that going to be the bashing of San Diego Mojo? No, it's not. Hopefully they win on this Friday,
Check
the
out
home
their
opener.
home opener this
Yeah,
Friday.
absolutely, against Las Vegas at 7:15 ish.
Are you guys going?
No, we're gonna go to
We got people
Gold Cup.
going.
We got people going.
Oh,
The magic of the roadcaster.
I love that. I love that. But I mean, I feel like I have a question for you guys because I think this is something that you guys probably face too, and people probably ask you. But I know, do you guys feel like you hold SDFC to a higher standard than you hold San Diego Wave, that you held San Diego Loyal?
Go ahead.
Go, please.
No, go
please.
first. Go
Rock,
first.
paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go first.
It's loser went first, but all right. I think that we're matching the energy. If they're really going to be coming in as the head honchos that they presume and have the money and capital to build and the ambition to do, then yes, because that's just an accountability factor. The accountability for San Diego Wave is different because their platform and just business model is different to begin with. They have a captivated audience with those clubs, with Soccer Mom, that they fill that stadium with that demographic already, that they don't need to go too much out of that sense, right? Mm-hmm. But as far as SDFC, it's just such a lofty, ambitious outlook that they have top to bottom. And that's, again, I give them credit for that because good, like that's going to put San Diego soccer on the map. And that's what we're all about. We want to have that be world renowned if possible, but just knowing how it's built from the beginning and not even talking about the source of the funding, none of that. Literally an academy-based team hasn't been successful in world football in a championship sense pretty much ever, aside from maybe Ajax. And that's just tip of the top. That's the Netherlands team that just, produces so many world-class players, and it's just the way that they play. That's what SDFC's thinking that they're going to be.
That's what they're promoting.
That's what they're promoting, and this is on a soccer sense. That's what they want to have. Is it going to roll out that way? I don't know. I really don't know. Is it going to be the best team in the United States because of that? That'd be cool. And again, that would revolutionize the way that soccer is being built here in the United States. Like, hey, you save yourself some money, you have some local talent, you grow it, you put the philosophy on it. And I'm interested in seeing the development of coaching, right? The development of young coaches here in the region that go into the Right to Dream Academy and are able to make a career out of it. Because that's part of the growth of an academy too. You get good coaches. You have Rafa Marquez, who played for Barcelona forever. Now he's in Barcelona too. He's next up, probably, maybe, to get the top, get the top, the team one manager. But he came up in that philosophy, in that way of playing, in that style. So I think that San Diego FC has a good outlook, and I think it's only right for us to hold them accountable for that in every sense, because I'm not going to fault anybody if they're not really going and spending the resources where it's not going to be a bottom dollar decision or mover for them. I can't blame them because I know the structure of modern soccer's money. But you can do good things along the way.
So I agree, but I'm on a different mindset right now when it comes to Wave. I am holding Wave to a higher standard this season alone because they're the only team out there playing this season and outdoor as a major league team, right? Mm-hmm. I'm being very hard on Alex Morgan because she is the face of that franchise. And, again, like, you'll see my tweets and I'm like, not going after her, but keeping her accountable for things that she needs to be doing as a leader and the face of that franchise. I do think Wave are the team of San Diego right now when it comes to soccer. They're the only team out there playing. I mean, besides the Soccers, right? But that's MASL. This is the NWSL, and it's outdoor. They're playing at Snapdragon.
I get it. It's fine.
Cheap shots at them.
It's okay. What when you say you want to hold her more accountable, right? Leadership or whatever. That like, what are there specific things that you're wanting to see from her that you haven't seen, or like you're wanting to, or like I've seen this from her in year 1 or year 2, and I want more of this in year 3.
Non-penalty contributions.
I mean, I'll tell you this about Wave right now, and we'll go to Alex Morgan. They're not putting Alex Morgan on press conferences right now. They're giving a chance to other players, and I really like that. When it comes to Alex Morgan, her social media presence makes a big impact. I mean,
gigantic.
Like, to me, it was very disrespectful that her first tweet after getting called up to the Women's Gold Cup was eye emojis of match day for the U.S. Women's National Team instead of, man, me official. Sorry. I'm very curious to see if she even sent a message to me official.
Yeah, I feel like, so I didn't see it in real time. I heard about this. I think I was in Coachella when, right, she got called up. And on one hand, I think I defend it because I think in Alex's case, and I'm putting myself in her shoes, right? And I think, right, it's going to get, I think the eyeballs got more traction too because Mia's from San Diego.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So I think it's going to hit hard, but I'm going, all right, I'm Alex Morgan. She's 34 years old.
Yeah.
You know, maybe she didn't go to the last camp because, they wanted to look at some younger players, or maybe she was like, hey, I just want to have some time off with my family, whatever. But then not getting the call initially for this. And then now I'm sure she's looking at like, right, is this the end of the road for me? I really want to go to the Olympics. If I don't go to this camp and say they win this cup without her, is she now going like whatever? So I feel like that initial just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like maybe this is my chance back in to kind of like whatever. So I think I just separated the two because I'm like, I really don't think any player would be happy to get in that. But I think I would agree. But
I would hope it's a wake up call for her, right? Saying like, oh shit, like I didn't get called up. Damn, this opportunity presented itself. I'm in the team now. Take more ownership of it. Be a leader. Win the cup, and then win those few people that you lost over. I mean, again,
she knows she had no right being on the FIFA Pro Best World 11, and I think that she got feedback that was, more realistic of that, accolade, right? Like she knows. I don't think there's ever been a time where she's been questioned. Really, is why is she on there? Why is she here? This year was the year where it's like, she didn't win the World Cup. She didn't contribute a lot. There was the Penalex kind of season that just happened. It wasn't that great. It was set up for her to make the championship. Didn't make the championship. And that can definitely just be a motivator for her to say, okay, well, all the shit's getting talked about. Now it's time to go ahead and just kind of switch something up. And if that's going to be a different mentality for her going into the season in the way that she plays, if she plays a little bit more of a assist playmaker type situation, just let Jaden Shaw take care of it. There's a lot of firepower. At least Bennett is doing fantastic. There's a lot of speed, a lot of young legs, a lot of Stanford people, and that's the DNA that's kind of getting injected into San Diego Wave,
that
right?
Backline, yeah.
But ultimately, like I think that Morgan has an opportunity to just shift her whole play style, whole soccer nature in general, and she can do it because she's really good. She's fantastic. Some of the best plays that she had were as an assister to Trinity Rodman in the World Cup, and just having those being that catalyst of change and disruption in the midfield because she has the vision, she has the touch, she can move forward, and she's still dangerous enough to get a shot from outside the box to where that's going to be, you have to cover Alex Morgan. You just can't not cover her. You have to not just lock her down. So I think that's going to be just her leadership that you're asking is on the field, be that person who, you know what, I know things aren't working for me right now. I need to adjust and not try to go over and rely on Corny at getting me the ball. Now I need to go get the ball because there's nobody in the midfield with that height that's going to give me that header directly from Sheridan. So altogether, this whole team view is going to be interesting to see how Casey manages it. Because if Casey keeps forcing Morgan in those spots and it's just not working, she has to have the chutzpah to be able to just yank her out on time. And that's her growth. That's Casey's growth. And she's mentioned it. She didn't do well by making late substitutions in that semifinal, and she paid for it. Korniak should have been there. It was a physical game. She's going to get a yellow card anyways. She ended up getting a yellow card anyways, but you needed that physicality in that match to spark that game up. And she was honest about it. And there's been times last season where she was out-coached. And this is no knock on Casey. It's just that's just the nature of this high level of a league. And that's a testament to the NWSL. They have great coaches. They have great players. They have great systems. If you are not there to play as a team, top down, on the pitch, off the pitch, you're going to lose. And that was apparent in the halfway season. That's what gives me hope, though. Casey adjusted just enough to get him through that dark period where the World Cup players are away into a position to win the Supporter Shield. And that's what I think was the greatness of Casey Stoney coaching in that way, that she managed to do it.
You. I mean, you saw in Coachella, she played Doniak as a left back. Like, she's going to give you that creativity. She's going to figure out a way. Are we being fair? Am I being fair? I'm asking both of you. Expecting Alex Morgan to be that leader. Because there's players that are talented and they're great, but they're just not meant to be leaders. And the biggest one you can think of is Messi. Is Messi really a leader? Not really.
He's not. He really isn't. He's
not.
He's not going to be vocal.
That leader? Is she that person?
I think I could answer this from, like I'm lucky enough to go to a lot of training sessions, and I think what I've noticed is she's a bar raiser and like standard setter, and she's not afraid to say, hey, raise it up, or hey, if like people are too lighthearted and people need to be serious. Like, I actually remember this before the semifinal game last year, and they were going through their PKs. Like, every single person took a PK on the team, including, I think, both backup goalkeepers. And who actually has like a wicked PK. I was like,
she has a leg on her.
Yeah. But going back to your point, they were like, I think they were told to celebrate, if they scored, like act like how you are in the game. And I think there was a point where it was teetering on, like maybe being like a little too corny. And Alex, I don't know verbatim, but like she was like, hey, like this is serious, let's lock it in. Like, and kind of like the idea of like, hey, it could come down to this.
Yeah.
So I think there's other people too, and it's like I haven't seen how she was in Orlando. I don't know. And it's a question that I'm curious if I would ever ask her. I'd be like, how do you feel like your leadership evolves, or how do you feel like your leadership has to evolve? Because I think Kaylin Sheridan is the vocal leader on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And the fiery vocal leader.
Yeah.
I think, and just seeing, I think Elise Bennett is going to be a vocal. I don't want to like throw a leader label on her, but like I've seen her be more vocal. And I think right now too, where they're at in training and not having the internationals, like certain people have to step up and be that way. But I feel like, Mackenzie Doniak's more of like a calming, I'll talk, but I'm not going to like exert my voice too hard. So I think that's why I was asking, like, what are you wanting to see out of her? Because I think even if she's not that rah Megan Rapinoe leader, I feel like when she's at training or she's just in the building, I think it has an effect almost on every player where you're like, I better be on my shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and I think to your point, like maybe that is what, like, maybe that type of leader is not what you want out of her, and you want something else out of her.
But if that's who she is, that's who she is.
Yeah, I think. I'm curious to see. Like, that would be the question that I would have too. Is like, now that we're in year 3, and I was talking to one of the assistant coaches last night who actually moved here last year from Sweden, and I just said, how does it feel now compared to last year when you moved from across the world?
Yeah,
and I think that's the prevailing theme, even with the internationals gone, that I got from them in Indio for just being at the preseason game and one training session is just, it just seems very much more like calm. Not in like we're taking our foot off the gas, but like people just feel more settled, you know, right? Like you have year 3 players, and it's sort of like what I said with Loyal. It's like those year 3 and year 4 players, those Charlie Adams, those Elijah Martins, those Colin Martins, you know, like you have those steadying presences that I think now Wave has sort of now established with, you know, I bring up Doniak again because Casey said in her interview, she's like, I trust Doniak to play anywhere I need her to play.
Yeah.
And right, we think back to year 1, they were still trying to figure all that out.
Yeah, 100%.
You have the Westphals,
yeah.
right? You have, I mean, McNabb, but she's been getting injured.
Yeah, that's a bummer because McNabb, I think, is a really integral part. And
the Van Egmonts.
Van Egmond. I think, too, Carusa is going to be, to me, like that, to your point, too, with the semifinal, I think, you know, I think that whole stadium was just like at halftime being like, okay, we're going to see, you know, but I know the travel issues of her coming back from where she was with the international, I think played into
it did.
everything. But I went with Carusa to her middle school, actually, the other week.
Oh, okay,
and
Sick.
she was talking about how, like, I have never been able to play in my hometown. And, you know, like, I remember this was something that Loyal's Nate Miller used to say about players. And he was like, you know, I can be skeptic about, like, signing San Diegans because, like, do they truly want to play here? And, like, are they motivated to do well? Or is it like, oh, I'm in my hometown and, like, it's a comforting thing. So to me, I'm like, just seeing her at her school and hearing her talk, and it's like, man, I feel like she's going to be primed for like a big season. And then you have people, you know, like Maya Jones too, who I think we're right was a 4th round draft pick and probably fell in the draft because she takes up an international spot. But man, anytime I see her at training or even in that preseason game, you can tell she's like, yo, if I'm not making this team, I'm going to make it really hard on you. And she's playing incredible. Like every time I'm out there, I'm like, you notice her and you're like,
Okay.
And I think that's what Johnny was even saying in the post-game presser. Shout out
Johnny Richardson, everything San Diego.
San Diego.
But he was saying, like, you know, you have a lot of forwards. You have, and I think that was something that I feel like sort of was the same theme at like Loyal, where it's like there weren't enough of them, and then all of a sudden you have like, and then you have the Evan Conway, you know, you have Vassell, you know, and it's like I think for
too many forwards now.
yeah. But I think for Wave, it's like, you know, there wasn't somebody like Carusa coming off the bench in year 1. And I think when she got there and sort of found her role, it's like you were pumped. You're like, when they went to the bench, you were like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
there's options, and they're really good options, right? And I think that's a testament to the type of competition that we're going to expect of Wave this season internally. Is it's not going to be a given. Nobody's going to be given this position. If you can play in multiple positions, you're going to be more valuable to this team because you can play well in those positions.
I mean,
last
McNabb
year
started that.
Yeah,
That's a center mid, and then a left back,
Sierra
and then a center
Engie.
back. Sierra Engie
like,
playing
everywhere, like just a complete utility player. And I think that's what Casey really appreciates, is being able to have fun and different ways to maneuver. Because last year, you know, you got no internationals during the World Cup, and that season you got to play with what you got. Like we saw, not off the streets, but like, you know, college replacements, college level replacements that came in mid-year. They got assigned. They were professionals for a little bit, and then they were released immediately once the World Cup players
It's
came
really
in.
hard to do that, though, because it takes a very knowledgeable coach to be able to see a player and say, yeah, you can be a striker, but I think you could also be a left back.
Yeah.
And Pep Guardiola is the best at that. Just creating a player, seeing them and say, Philip Lam, no, you're a right back, but you could be a better center defensive mid. So I think Casey Stoney's very good at identifying that from her players and saying, you know what, you have the qualities to be able to play left back if I need you to play left back.
Yeah, you have the tools, you have the bodies, and that's really what it is a lot of the times too.
You can put anyone, and then it doesn't work out, and then that you lose that game, and it goes back to you, and then that's how some coaches get fired. So it's also tricky.
Yeah, I think they, without even knowing, but like I think the moves that they made this year sort of spoke to, hey, yeah, when the players are gone for this window, or I think in general, whether the players are gone or not, we want more competition and more depth. And I think that you see Savannah McCaskill, that signing, trading for Elise Bennett. I think there's without stepping on anything, I think there's a goalkeeper addition too that's coming that I like, and that like if you're around, not even in private conversations, just public, you're hearing from people around the team and that work for the team and that are just like, we're pumped about all of these signings. Especially I was hearing Jill Ellis talk about Savannah McCaskill, and she's like, I've loved her style of play, and I think knowing her from Angel City and being a little bit more of a physical element on the field. And I'm somebody that, personally, I know I was talking to you about like the type of soccer that I like. And like, I just like really physical teams. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Wave has really ever been a team that is like, we're going to like, we can establish a physical dominance in this game. And not saying that they're a soft team, but I just don't know if they had enough of those players that like, I think like for even her size, not being big, like I think Dani Colaprico is like, right? She's like that bulldog mentality of like, I'm coming after you and I'm going to be on your heels. And I think McCaskill's like that. And I think there's
that Pat Beverly.
Yeah. And like hearing Elise Bennett, I think the coolest thing I heard in her post-game presser after the preseason win, she said something to the effect of, like I think it might have been Johnny or Megan, maybe it was Megan O'Keefe, their new PR person, asked her like, hey, like talk us through that goal that you had with the header. And she basically was saying like, I know I can have physical dominance, and I like when I get up, like there's not too many players that can, get up with me there. So, and that's where I was just like, I love hearing that confidence. I love hearing that that's going to be, because as we know, right, set pieces were not really a strong suit probably for them, and maybe
on both sides
they sucked.
Yeah, and I think somebody like especially Elise, I think McCaskill being a veteran and some of those players, I think like there's this like we go back to like the Morgan effect. I think there's just like, hey, the standard isn't dropping because all these internationals are gone. Like even though they're playing with, like some players that they can't even announce like on a roster, type thing. I think it was cool to see. They get the win because right as we know, some of those preseason games can just be 0-0 yawns, and I think that was the fun part. Is like, hey, this was our first true preseason game for them, and they're, they got 2 goals and they got the win.
I mean, props to Elise Bennett too, right? Knowing that she's very physical, and if she gets up in the air, she's mostly gonna win things. That's knowing also how to use that physicality, because I mean, Taylor Cornier would go up, she knows she would win, but she'd go a little too hard and she'd get a call on a foul, right?
Not knowing your own strength.
Exactly.
And a lot of those calls were unfortunate because it's just the referee just looking bigger person versus little person, bigger person fouled. And that's just the nature of the optics of it. And I think the leadership that I think I'd like to see from Morgan or anybody on that team is whenever that happens, and so there's a call that just doesn't go the way. There's Kelsey Turnbow is getting her ankles destroyed, and probably why she had to retire. Pobrecita. It's just those, just the fouls accumulated. It's sad.
You want
it's just,
someone to go up to the ref and be like, hey.
Not even up to the ref. Give a shove to the other person who did it. Protect your player. And I think that McCaskill, Bennett will have that edge to be able to come and defend the player where it was Corniak going down, and you were upset for a little bit, but you were just like,
I feel you.
It is, you need to go as a captain, or whoever is going to wear that armband is going to go up to the referee and be like, hey, as a captain, that's not cool, and you better be calling it equally because you haven't been calling it on the other side of the field. Make sure you're doing that correctly. That's it. Okay. Or, hey, you keep fouling my player. You're going to go ahead. You're trying to poke at her. I'm going to go ahead and poke at you. Here's a little shove. Like, it just, that's the gamesmanship of it. I think the physicality
having your teammates
aspect will go there.
Okay, I like that.
What is your, like, I know we were talking about expectations, but, for a team that was an expansion team and has gone to the conference final, is that your expectation that they get back there? And also, what do you think is going to be the driving force to them getting over that hump? As weird as that sounds for being only in your 3rd year.
I think the goal now, realistically, should be the championship.
Just making it or winning it?
Winning it.
Okay.
I think winning it has to be the goal. Even if you don't win the Shield, winning the actual championship, the NWSL as a whole. I think the driving factors of it is gonna come down to Casey. You have the tools. If she had made some earlier substitutions or anything, they very much would have gone against Gotham in that final.
I mean, they haven't beaten OL Reign, right? Or
Never
sorry,
have.
Seattle.
Seattle.
Right now.
Yeah, but
They
like,
also have never beaten OL Reign, and I don't think that's ever going to happen in the history of
Never
Wave
again.
now.
They
Never
might
again.
beat
That's
Seattle
never going to
Reign,
happen.
but not OL Reign.
Nope.
But I think it's gonna be on Casey a lot to be able to identify and not free sub and just. I mean, it's scary, right? I mean, you make the wrong sub and it haunts you for the rest of your life. And I think she's owning up to those mistakes, like you said, Tony. But it's gonna come down to her in those big games. Sometimes you're gonna have the tough decision and say, Alex, I'm gonna have to take you out right now and put someone else in because I mean you're not playing at your best right now, or anybody else. Even though you know you can rely on them, it's gonna take those hard substitutions.
and I feel like Casey has shown that willingness to make early subs or halftime subs.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's there. But I think you're hitting a great point. There's something that I think I also want to ask is because I feel like this would happen with Loyal, and I feel like this is now happening with Wave because it seems to be the same feeling. Why are San Diego teams like so hated by other teams? Like, and I say this from like, I know in the NWSL there are teams that literally cannot stand Wave because I think they believe they get like preferential treatment, and whether that was like the Landon Donovan effect with Loyal and maybe the Alex Morgan effect, but like, what do you guys think is the reason why? Like,
We
for
can't have it all.
Loyal, I've always said that conspiracy theory where referees would not make calls for them because of when Landon stepped on the field in that whole Colin Martin incident. Like a coach doesn't go on the field and talk to the ref.
It's sacred ground.
So I think
how,
for
who do you
refs,
think
they
you
had
are?
that outing for Loyal. That was my conspiracy. For Wave, I mean, can you talk on that? I mean, you're more San Diegan than anyone here.
I think that it's just people being jealous that we are in San Diego.
and that is why
And-
people hate the San Diego teams.
because that's a
And
typical San Diego
That
answer.
typical San Diegan. That's why I wanted him to
we
say
can't
that.
have it all. I mean, seriously, we can't have
You
it
can't
all.
have winning.
We have
teams. You
we
can't.
have great weather. We have a great culture.
You're
we
also-
have something that not a lot lot of.
We're in the most expensive city in the U.S. now. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're self-aware of that, and none of us really like that. And there's a reason why it's the most expensive city, unfortunately. And look, I was looking at jobs at McAllen, Texas, because I saw on Instagram.
Breaking news, Tony.
no,
leaving
no.
San
I was-
Diego. You looked at me like, wait, what's
McAllen,
going
Texas.
on?
Yeah, no, and it was a $200,000 house, and I was like, wow, obviously it's a super
mansion.
McMansion. And then I'm like, cool, let me look at the YMCA, how much they pay in my position. $17. Got it.
I
Okay.
thought you were about to start like what isn't RGV Toros? They're not playing,
So,
right?
yeah, I mean, I can buy the whole stadium. They're not going to be using
Yeah,
it.
I was gonna say you could restart the club. What do you think winning the championship would do for the soccer dynamics in the city for if Wave won it this year, especially with? And I'm not trying to be like create the divide, but like right with San Diego FC, I think there's a lot of whether or not people are talking about it or not. I think there's probably worry of like, ooh, is SDFC going to eat some market share right of Wave? And it was the same thing right when Wave started and Loyal was still happening. It was like naturally there's going to be people that like, hey, we're not going to go to Loyal games anymore because we go to Wave games. But like, do you think a championship would? What kind of impact would you think that
So,
has?
I think-
shit gets tensed up if that happens because then the stadium is still giving priority to SDFC despite having a championship winning caliber team.
But they are paying more money.
They are paying more money, then that's the only reason why. So I think it creates a lot more tension. But I don't know what you were. Gonna
So,
say.
like, going back to what's going to take for Wave to actually win a championship. I think that it's going to be something that has to do with the intangibles, something that's going to be like, and this is what it's going to be like. It's going to be Alex Morgan's final season. Like whenever she announces this is because she's going to do it. She's not going to be like,
you think this is her final season?
Maybe not. That's what I'm saying. I don't think this season they're going to go ahead and go for a championship because the other teams are just stacked and they do have the talent to take it all the way, but they have yet to prove to get across that hump into the championship. That's why I asked you, like, winning the championship or making the championship. I think making the championship is a stride. Yeah, it's disappointing to lose it, but you're still in that upper echelon. But what I think is going to push them over the
San
edge.
Diego sports mentality. Make the championship.
No,
and
no,
that's
no.
a winning season.
No,
you have to win.
Hey, we've been to it twice as a city and lost twice, which is fine.
Man, that
But no,
pain.
like, I think that when Morgan says, this is my final year, a la Rapina, right? All of that hype is going to be like, we have to get it for her. We
You think
have
she
to win
retires
for
in
her.
San Diego?
We have to. Yes, we have.
I don't know about
She's
that.
no,
Yeah.
100%. She's going to live here. She's already said she's going to live here forever, like pretty much. Whenever that happens, the team is going to just solidify around her and take her up until that championship game. Whether they win it or not, I don't know. But I think that's going to be the energy taken into when Wave finally wins it. Now, what's going to happen when they win it? It's going to be telling on the championship parade, because they're going to have a championship parade, because this last season they had to plan one. They had to have the blueprints of, hey, what happens if in the next 2 weeks San Diego Wave wins a championship? We're going to have a parade. There were blueprints on where that parade was. There were blueprints on what the route was going to be, and I actually thought it was going to be really cool. I don't want to say it just to jinx it again. I think I said it once, but I'll just leave that for people to find out.
That
But
blueprint stays the same now.
yeah, and if that's the
Until it
case, then how many
happens.
people come out? How many people are really going to be touting this as this is the first, and giving it the respect of this is the first major title for San Diego in its history ever? Sorry, Sockers. I'll take a pay cut for that one.
Yeah.
But
Good 50, 60,
that's going to be 50, 60,000.
Yeah. No more.
I think it depends on where they would have it in the city, because there's this fear, and I think this is the difference between like the standard at men's sports and women's sports, because I think you saw with the Las Vegas Aces, they held a parade, one of
Yeah.
their first championships, and there were pockets that weren't really filled up, but there was a ton of people there. But the like women's sport bashers were like, oh, there's nobody here. Look, oh, this would never happen. And it's like, I also think, to your point, I challenge, and I don't say this just because I know Greg Elstein, but like, thank goodness he's back on sports radio in this town. And I know Annie obviously is co-host, because I've been here 4 years, and it's the only show that seems so committed to just being like, we're gonna tell the story of San Diego sports, no matter how mainstream it is, and that's where they focus the show. Because no offense to the Ben and Woods and whatever, but like, I've lived in a lot of cities, I've lived in a lot of sports radio, and I think the prevailing thought would be that if Wave wins it, I don't think a lot of the media would give it's like true credit.
Yeah.
I think they would find it to be like, oh, that's cute, but yeah, when the Padres win the championship, that's gonna be the first ever, like, and call that a hot take or be what it's made, but like, I listen to enough of the sports radio in town, and there's not a lot of people talking about San Diego Wave. And I remember after Wave sold out, I forgot what show it was, but I think I was listening to 97.3, and they were just like, oh, well, let's see if they can keep that momentum going. And it's just like,
Why?
and it's to me, it's just, it's like, it's poor takes, and it's people that are uneducated and really haven't followed at all, and are just never going to give, at the moment, never giving women's sports
100%.
any chance, other than just like, and then just being like, oh, well, I'm a Padres fan, and that's all I care about. And it's like, sorry, I got a little heated.
No,
'cause
no,
I-
it's fine.
It's those guys giving us that we're actually trying to promote it and encourage it to be a bigger thing, giving us a bad rep, really.
Yeah. So I mean, I to your point of saying, I think if Wave wins a championship, like I think there's going to be a lot. I think we saw it a little bit with that story coming out with SDFC and the stuff. And I know I was at the brand reveal, and I think Jill Ellis was there, and I know she had a conversation in person with some of the higher ups there at SDFC, and I don't think there's any animosity between those two clubs at all. Obviously Casey shared her feelings about
Based on
it.
her experiences.
Yeah,
based on her
yeah.
experiences
Who
entirely.
Absolutely.
Who started that? Shit.
But it's there, and I only say one other point in talking about, I think, what the difference, even with national media with like women's sports. I was watching, I think, the WNBA finals last year, and within like 30 seconds of the Aces winning, they kicked it to Scott Van Pelt. And then Scott Van Pelt is like, oh, and I think maybe it was baseball or NFL, something was happening, and he like kicked it to like, oh, and something about like a completely different sport as he was doing at tees. And it's just like, I don't know in any other mainstream men's sport where they would, after 30 seconds of a title, kick it to talking about some like random regular season event. And then, and then like basically kick the coverage. And I'm like, that to me is like, when I listen to a lot of women, when I listen to a lot of athletes, when you're listening to what Casey Stoney has to say, and it's like, right, they're living it and that's their experiences. And if you just, I think, take a step back and you truly listen to that and then you observe it and you go, wow, like the gap is pretty massive. And it's going to take, I feel like, it's going to take a lot of men to kind of like open up their minds to that. And like, also, yeah, as we talk about too, like the games are different, right? I mean, you saw that but you even saw that with Kenny Smith with the whole All-Star game thing, like telling, that, she should have shot from the women's three. And it's just like, what a dumb
thing to say. Yeah, into a microphone. And that's not to say like they need us. They don't need us. They've been doing a fantastic job. And that's the thing. They just need the recognition from everybody to really look at what's happening and say, wow, like that's actually a great product. And that goes for any sport that I've been really just exposed to on the women's side, because granted, I did not follow a lot of women's sports up until 4 years ago. And that's just the reality of things. And now that I'm kind of getting into it a little bit more, I'm seeing these obstacles that are just laid in front in ways that, in a way that we've faced. I don't want to say it's a reverse, just patriarchy thing where it's like, oh, it's the men, let's not give them attention. But we felt that in a sense. It's like, oh, okay, that didn't feel nice that we were overlooked, probably because we're dudes. Like, well, it's tenfold on the other side as well. 100%. And it's a matter of coming in together, and it's saying the quiet things out loud in order to make the sport the highlight there, right? Like it's
we got a little taste of it, and they get the whole freaking bottle.
Yeah. And it's the nature of it, and it's hopefully just the direction that the growth of the NWSL does have. And it's not just
because that league is growing,
and it's not just with dudes, not just with women, it's not just with anybody. It's just the coverage is difficult in soccer in the U.S. in general, and just everywhere.
That's true.
And they just don't help themselves. NWSL, USL, MLS, nobody helps themselves in being able to be advocates and letting people be advocates for you for free. We want to give information. We want to give the people who are going to be paying for those seats more things to get excited about. It's not a matter of controlling the narrative. The narrative is whatever you give us anyways. So, of course, we're going to go ahead and do that. These are the facts. Well, are we going to add our salt and pepper to that? Sure, that's fine. But here are the facts of what's going on. Let us go ahead and do that. Same thing with back to SDFC. Guys, you guys are $1 million corporation. How hard is it to give a couple of jerseys to kids? A couple of your non-Adidas merchandise at the store that you're charging $60 for, I guess, manufacturing. I actually looked it up. I went the other day to the SDFC shop, looked up the shirts and looked up the source from China and just kind of that difference. And it's like, okay, well, it's not Adidas. And a lot of people are saying that. Get all that stuff and start donating it. Give it to the community. Because again, once the new stuff comes rolling in, you're not going to sell any of it anyways, but you're going to make a lifelong memory giving that kid that you took a picture with, give him a SDFC shirt. Mm-hmm. He's going to keep that and wear that forever. And his family's going to want it to go to a game and just, like this is who we are. This is our community. And it's those little steps that, are eventually going to bring more money in. And that's the thing. It's all going to bring more money and currency and value to the MLS, to the NWSL, doing these little things.
You're going to make it back in the parking.
Gosh.
You know they were charging the same amount for parking yesterday at Snapdragon?
$35
for the 600 people that were there?
From what I know, I think, and it probably depends on, right, the organizers and the contracts, but I want to say sometimes the parking is split revenue-wise. But I think I would imagine that changes for everybody because I think, right, SDFC, their lease is very different, and I think they keep a lot of the parking or whatever.
Well, CONCACAF, if you're not feeding the media, then don't charge $35 for parking. Go ahead, take a $5.
Do you want us to keep going or do you want us to wait? Yeah.
No, it sucks that it's like that, right? And I mean, However, I mean, you can agree there are very shitty men that don't give a fuck about women's sports.
Yeah, no, I think that, and so one of the things I love when I'm at the games, and right, my job is primarily to photograph for the team. And anytime I see a dad with their daughter, it's like I'm like, I'll when I walk around the stadium, usually I'll even like stop them and I want to like pose them because, you know, whether or not Wave uses that or not, like to me, I'm just like that to me is cool. And I think to the effect and kicking it back to seeing Carusa go to her middle school and she touched on it and she goes, you know, like it was hundreds of kids. They had 2 assemblies and I think they pretty much like cycled the whole school through there. So it was like 500 students at each time. And she touched on it. She's like, you know, when I was growing up, I would have dreamed about having a women professional athlete come. And I think, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the little boys and I was like, yeah. And, you know, it made me think back to when I was school and I was like, I can't remember a woman athlete unless it was maybe an Olympic athlete, right? Because I feel like when I was growing up, you know, I'm 38, but that was like, of any sport, I'm like, I think an Olympic athlete was like probably the only prominent ones that I remember until the 99ers. You know, like I remember Mia Hamm, you know, I remember Brandy Chastain, of which I felt terrible. I didn't know it at the time, but Brandy Chastain, right, is with Bay FC, and I was filming an interview with Jill, and Brandy Chastain came up, but I didn't recognize her.
It happens.
But then all of a sudden, like I heard her say Brandy, I was like, oh my God, I wonder if that's Brandy. And I was like, oh God, you know. So I think to that point of what, you know, like it's conversations I even have with Kaylin Sheridan because she'll stay right an hour and a half after the game signing for everybody, and her partner Dom will even say, she's like, you know, like I'm just gonna sit down in the stands because I know she's gonna take forever, and so I say this to Kaylin, I'm just like, I just want to give you love because like I don't see a lot of athletes, no matter male or female, do that where they give up that much time and they're so selfless. And Kaylin will always look at me and she's like, why wouldn't I do this? You know, but it's like, I think she's saying it in the way of just understanding the importance. I actually was at a TKI, the goalkeeping training that she does in the off season. They ran a camp out here in San Diego and it downpoured both days. And after the first day, it's raining and every single kid of that camp is waiting to get a picture. And I think one of the pictures that I remember I loved, and I'm just going to tell you, Tony, that you're not going to be able to find this one, but I wish you could. It's literally like the 5 minutes after, like all these kids didn't even want to autograph first, and they just wanted a hug from Kaylin. So they were like, and it's just, you know, like 7-year-old girl, 10-year-old girl. There was one girl I actually saw her at Alex Morgan's camp that they ran in the South Bay, and she came to this camp, and she wanted Caitlin to sign her cleats, and she was literally like crying. And I think that's the cool impact that I've had, because to your point, I'm not gonna say I've been a women's sports like supporter all my life. Like
white knighting it. Yeah.
Like I really didn't get into it until you know, I briefly worked for the LA Sparks, so I was around WNBA more, but I really didn't consume NWSL. I would watch a women's national team and would say to anybody, I was like, they're more entertaining to watch than the men's.
Yeah, 100%.
And I would even say that to even now, like, but I think now, having been around this league, and I think I've said on a past podcast, there's no reason that this league couldn't rival the popularity if given the same platform of the NBA or the NFL. Like, because I don't see any sport anywhere where the players are so selfless to stay after the game and have like true interactions. Not like, hey, I'm signing an autograph, next one. You know, no photos. It's like the personal connection that I see this happen in each market, right? And like home or road, right? Like, and I know Alex Morgan's maybe the anomaly where everybody's gonna want her autograph, but like I think that's the coolest thing. Even in San Diego, you'll see signs for like, you know, the 4th best player on the opposing team or the 5th best player. And it's like, and all these girls will stay after. So I think that's the element that I've really grown to love about the NWSL. And to your point about seeing the growth, I would imagine, right, they're getting Boston next year as an expansion team. So that'll be 15 teams.
Yeah.
So I feel like, right, it's getting there. And I know like the new CBA and then the new TV deal. And as we know, TV drives everything. So, but.
And now that I'm thinking about it, like putting SDFC at a different standard, Let's put them at the same standard for that. That would be great. To have boys and girls, just the youth, really resonate with the players that you're going to have, know their names, know the backup players, know the bench. Look, Morgan Hackworth is one of the most loved players, and I, love the guy, but he didn't see a lot of action, but everybody knew who he was.
Everybody.
And knew the back of his baseball card, the stats. They learned it, right? I think that's the standard that I hope that SDSC brings, right? With homegrown players. Like, even if it's a homegrown player, like being able to see yourself in the shoes of somebody who's making it and playing in under the big lights. That's going to be huge. But again, how difficult is that going to be when cultivating your team based on an academy? Will, if you get a Mo Salah, do that? Because Caitlin Sheridan, at the level, I don't care what level it is, that she's one of the best in the world, like this elite, and she's doing that. Like I've had a couple of interactions with Caitlin, and just in different events, at the Mojo event, just popped up, and she's as genuine as it gets, and she has no right to do that. She has no business being so cool, but yet she is. And I think that that's what the community of soccer truly is that you see yourself. Like, you were just there a couple of years ago. Like, that was you. And if you can be that bridge, that gap to, sign something for somebody and take the time to make sure that your signature is legible. Because if it's just a scribble thing, like, that could be anybody. I actually had that with Eddie Guerrero. I met Eddie Guerrero. Have I told you that story?
I don't think so.
So Eddie, you know Eddie Guerrero. Yeah. So I know you do. Yes.
He's like, do we really have to do a wrestling segment
right
now?
Yeah, no, it's wrestling. Yeah,
rest in peace.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay.
Damn.
Well,
damn.
I guess. Thank you. So Eddie Guerrero, wrestler, came over, and back in the day, the radio pop-ups, right, would come up. If you had a bumper sticker of the radio, you get a prize or whatever. So they were giving bumper stickers away, and Eddie Guerrero was doing a remote into Chula Vista Mall. And I had perfect attendance in all of elementary school, even though I lived in TJ. Like, my mom would be relentless about it. But this one day, Eddie Guerrero was here. I wasn't going to go to the show. I didn't go to a show until I was an adult, like 3 or 4 years ago.
Was it a WWE or WCW?
It was a WWE.
Okay.
Like, this was so I was in 6th grade, so this was 2004. So just to give you an idea how close to, championship Eddie and, post Eddie we're talking about, like, this is a height of his fame. La Nueva 106.5. All Spanish, all bam, 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 music. Had the pop-up. We went over. He signed a bumper sticker for me of that radio station because I got taken out of class. And, of course, because perfect attendance, I need to go back to school. So I had this bumper sticker with Eddie Guerrero's signature, and I showed it to all of my friends. None of them believed me because it just didn't look. It just looked like a scribble. I was like, no, it was him. I couldn't take a picture because that doesn't exist.
I was gonna say, yeah.
How do you prove that? And so I've met Eddie Guerrero like that, but it's not that interaction. I'm not saying that he wouldn't do that, but again, it's those connections, that lifelong memories, core memories that the players of Wave are really producing. The Sockers do the same thing.
You believe him?
Yeah.
I don't believe him.
That he met Eddie.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It was one of the darkest days of my life.
Look at that face.
That was one of the darkest days.
That's how I'm gonna
It
get you
was
every
really
time. I was like,
sad.
nah, you didn't meet Eddie Guerrero.
It was really sad, man. Like, I was like, no, look, it's his signature.
I got a question. And I think it's deserving of a topic because, to me, the dust hasn't really settled yet. But I just want to get both of you guys' feelings of, obviously, there's no San Diego Loyal, right? And we're gonna flip the calendar to March, and there's not gonna be a USL Championship season here. And obviously, for me, like, that really bums me out because I'm seeing Colin Martin in a North Carolina kit. Evan Conway's out there too, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Xavi in Monterey Bay, and it feels weird. I saw a video of Morgan Hackworth, who's playing up in Spokane. Is that how you say it?
Tampa.
Spokane.
Oh yeah, with the shoot that he was doing. Yeah.
So, like, I guess, how do you guys feel? And from even that last match, right? Because I feel like when you lose in a playoff game, and I still have visions of, I forgot what Phoenix player it was, but I don't know if he knew that it was the final game, and he's waving goodbye to the home fans, and they're all booing him, and I'm just like, oh, this kid doesn't know, like, or he does know, and he's just being a savage. But I guess from then to now, like, what do you guys feel, and like, what kind of feelings come up when you think San Diego Loyal?
Man, the fact that you're even bringing it up, now I'm thinking, I was like, oh shit, that's true. We're not gonna go to Torero anymore, probably ever again. In a very like selfish way, when it comes to like media credentials and all this, I'm like, damn, like that's another game. But it's also like, wow, we were so busy last season with Wave, Loyal, UPSL, Soccer's, everything that we're like, okay, now we really get to. I'm excited because now I really get to dive into San Diego Wave and solely focus on San Diego Wave and learn the league and learn other players. And I just, because I mean, we learned USL as we were going, but it was what we had for like 2 years at first, and we're picking it up really quickly. And now having to focus on two teams, it was a little too much. But the fact that I get to focus on Wave, I haven't really thought about. Like, oh man, I don't get to go to Torero anymore. So I haven't really had too much thought on that. But I'm excited because I get to just focus on one team, which is Wave. I don't know if I think Loyal had a bigger place in Tony's heart than it did in mine, if I'm being honest. Even though he plays the big boy that he's like, no, I'm a media and I don't like the team. He bought a couple jerseys. I never bought a jersey. I never bought merch from Loyal.
All right, throw me under the bus there, but all right.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, I never thought that I would support U.S. soccer as much as I did. And in supporting San Diego's brand of professional soccer, that's exactly what I was doing. And it didn't help to have fucking Landon Donovan like staring at me. And it was a great opportunity. And I think that's what I'm very thankful, because if it wasn't for San Diego Loyal existing, I don't think I would have had the impetus to keep this going and just really be like, we can't miss a week. We can't miss a week. We haven't missed a week. Like we can't do this. And now it almost seems like, well, there's nothing happening. Like, what's the point of doing a show? Like, and that's a true reality of kind of what we've gone through sometimes. It's like, well, do we want to just break the streak? And then I'm reminded of like, no, we went through this for a reason.
But there are times where we're like, dude, what the fuck are we gonna talk about?
Yeah,
today?
and it's been working out.
Something.
And it's been working out.
Yeah.
It's fine. But only to say that, like, it's really like it felt like high school. It really felt like going through soccer high school, learning, from not knowing how to ask a fucking question to having people now in the same CONCACAF front office just leading us. Like, hey, you guys are still here. Shout out Ivan. Just kind of, hey, you guys should construct a question this way. This is the way to do this. I know I picked your brain a lot of like, hey, like, can I tweet this? Like getting a message officially from a media blast from Loyal and not knowing whether or not I'm allowed to tweet about it, because last time I tweeted something, Nate Miller yelled at me. Like those learning building blocks, it was an education. And I think it was one of those like experiences where I learned more in doing that with San Diego Loyal than I would have going to school. So much so that I'd stopped going to school for communications because I was sitting in these classrooms and I'm like, I can do right now what everybody dreams of doing in this class. Mm-hmm. And I can do it to a degree that I think is
something that you love,
is genuine to me. Mm-hmm. And it's genuine in a sense that, yeah, we can be silly. We can do this. It's our little sandbox, but Loyal allowed us to do that because nobody else was doing anything, because there was that space. And what I'm afraid of San Diego FC is just them closing those doors and being so insular and saying, we don't need that. And just keeping us out of it and saying, you know what, we can write the stories. We can do this. And that's the standard for most MLS teams anyway. They have their in-house writers. They have their in-house reporters. They have their in-house everything. But you still need somebody to really have the questions that are, being asked that make people uncomfortable in the press conferences. One of the biggest compliments that I think we've ever received was on Always Loyal by Darren Smith, who was talking to newly appointed head coach Nate Miller, saying, are you ready to go down to the post matches and get the questions from Two Balls and a Mic, those hard hitting questions? And I was like, oh, because nobody else asks.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that's what Loyal's gonna represent for me. The players themselves, like, I'm sad, man. Elijah's dropping some bangers apparently on his Instagram. Have you heard his music?
I've taken some in. I mean, he would share that too, and I would go up to Fresno sometime and spend some time with him in the off season. But I feel like he's
really exploring that.
Well,
shit, man, the project we never got to see.
Puta madre.
Yeah, Jesus, my Achilles heel.
It's fine.
Yeah,
I think too, it's we talked about this, I think, before we came on the air, where like I think certain players in certain environments, and I think maybe him leaving the comfort of California for the first time in his life is now also giving him more ability to be like, oh, I can be me.
I'm a Cali boy
Yeah,
in Texas, and yeah.
And I don't know really the ins and outs of what he went through the final season at Loyal. I know it didn't go really the way he I think would envision. But I think there is something to him probably being more comfortable in showing his true self, which is great. I actually have another question for you guys. How do you feel the transition with the supporter groups of Chavos de Loyal moving right to supporting SDFC? Same thing with, I know the locals had different initial feelings, but have since joined to support San Diego FC. I'm just curious, how, like, because I know you guys have talked with people from all that, but like that dynamic, I'm sure was not easy. But like, what are your thoughts and just feelings on that?
I'll go first.
Okay, thanks.
I
I don't want to get canceled out here.
No, I mean, I don't think it's anything to be canceled for, and even upset anybody, because look, the Chavos, and we've had our discussions with the Chavos. We had a whole show based on them, and then it stopped. They started it and then stopped, and then we started again and stopped because it just ran its course. Their ideal of, if you're in the supporter group and you're only allowed to be in the supporter group and no other supporter groups, if that rule stands, okay, well, let's see what that means. Like, it's something that other supporter groups around the world also do. If you're part of this group, you cannot be part of that group. Very, it has its pros and its cons, right? The locals, I think, there was just a lot of more open wounds, I feel, just because they were the larger group. There is more people, so therefore you are going to get different takes and different feelings. And I think all of that, just kind of that malaise of SDFC being the new overlord that killed your team narrative, has died down in those that will eventually now support SDFC. The people who are just no are going to be no for a while. And we'll see. We'll do maybe a check back in for maybe forever. We'll check back in 5 years and see if that's still the case, right? Maybe, they had a personal thing with Tom Penn and they just don't like the guy, or they just don't like the way the direction's going for this or whatever reason, but they prove themselves otherwise later on. We'll see. I just hope the best for them, because there's so many people that, we've come to know in that same high school type experience. And again, I don't want to say high school as it's a remedial term or anything. It's just like the experience of 4 years going through something with a group of people it's transformative for everybody. And if it wasn't, I don't know, you just didn't grow as a person, I believe, because it was big for people inside. Dreams were crushed, dreams were realized. Ricardo Campos, like, of course he's going to want to take an MLS team. Of course he's want to take that role. He's been working for it. Like when he first got it inside of the San Diego Loyal office, when he had a discussion with me about, hey, we're going to go ahead and probably not move forward with this. I'm like, what about you? Like, are you going to go ahead and take that next step? Because in a player sense, what a story. The young player from from Brazil coming up over into New York, big city, goes to Red Bulls and does what he can and climbs the top, comes to San Diego and has this little club in 1904 that, is a shell company of sorts and kind of goes down and dies. But then out of the embers of that comes San Diego Loyal. San Diego Loyal has its sunrise and sunset. And after that sunset, you're still the Dark Knight, because now you're going to be with San Diego FC with all the money. You're fucking Bruce Wayne. Like, that's a cool arc. That's a cool story. Back with the supporter groups, I just hope that everybody is ready and prepared once that first kickoff happens, and that the energy remains the entire season and people realize what they got themselves into. Because there's people who do know. There's people who do know what it takes. There's people who do know that, there's going to be Wednesday games, Tuesday games at night. You're going to be tired. You're going to have to pay parking. You're going to have to go and bang those drums for something that you don't want to do and fill that whole stadium with nothing but cacophonous noise. But is that the reality of it? I don't know. Yeah. I hope so. New groups are starting up, and again, seeing those numbers, seeing these people, getting to know the 18th Battalion, getting to know the Dago Boys. They also part of 1904. It's cool to see all these groups coming back together, but I want to see that end product at the end of the day really represent and do San Diego justice. Go.
For the Chavos, I think it was a much easier transition because they have the whole Chavos is the community, and we support anything in the community. And they had the easy way out of saying, yeah, we're gonna be we're gonna have supporter groups for SDFC, and that's why Fronteras Ultras came out, which
And
they
for
have
San Diego.
and for San Diego, because Chavos is the community, and they're gonna always support anything that happens in the community. For the locals, I think it was a lot harder, and that's why it took a longer time for them to actually make the switch. Right, they had to ask all of their members, and majority wins. And do I personally think they should have kept it with the locals? No. I think if you were solely committed to one club as a supporters group, your club dies, your supporters group dies. That doesn't mean the people in there are gone. I think you start something new and name it something different, and those people that really want it. But I think the locals' name should have stayed with San Diego Loyal. That's just my personal.
And you asked your brother,
personal
who's
take. And I
part of
asked
the
my brother,
Masacre.
He's part of the Masacre. I told him, dude, if Cholos were to die and a new team comes into Tijuana, Masacre? Is it still Masacre for that new team? He's like, no. He said, fuck no. The Masacre dies with it. Whoever wants to start something new, they start something new. But that's what it's going to be. And I think that's something that's very different here. I mean, at least it's also different because it's a lower division league going to a higher division league now. But I personally think the locals' name should have stayed with San Diego Loyal out of respect as well, and then just started a whole new project. Granted, is that more difficult to accomplish in a year? Absolutely. But I think that would have been the proper way to do it. I mean, that's just my opinion. My opinion can be wrong.
So, I mean, is it the same thing with us? 2 balls and a mic? 2 balls and a mic got us here, and now we're trying to be San Diego Futbol? Like, why didn't we just create a new account for San Diego Futbol and not just cannibalize the 2 balls and a mic Twitter account
That's right.
and start? I know it's I know it's different. I know it's very different,
Yeah.
but like, if it's a head start that we had, it's a head start that they had, and it's an easier transition altogether. Just saying, hey, this is where we're going.
We did come up with the new name. We did come up with the new or logo, and it's
Yeah, okay, 100%. Like, and we got that head start, and they could have done that. They could have maintained the same people, same membership kind of lineage, just changed the name a little bit and gone from there. But I think that it's just an awkward timing too of them turning around and having really reneged against I like that word against the SDFC so viciously, and not in the sense of like, oh, they were vulgar. No, it's just like it's a reaction. It's a very like, oh my god, it's a very acute movement that this happened. It's a loss. It's everything. It's grief. But at the end of the day, like, you still have to make a decision. The decision was made there that we're going to support San Diego FC, and either you're with us or you're not. And I think they still have a space for those who are not to really kind of be part of the community. Like, you don't have to be, and I've seen this from a couple of people in general who just don't want to support SDFCs. Like, I don't want to lose a community that I've built, and I'm a member because I don't want to lose that community of these cool, awesome people.
I get that. I mean, it's hard, and I think they were put in a very tough situation, and I mean, they ended up with this decision, and they have. Once you make a decision, I'm a strong believer that you got to write with it, and that's exactly what they're doing, and I give them props for that. I'm just very curious to see who the head honcho of that supporters section is going to be, because
Well, they changed leadership, right? Locals recently.
So I believe the structure is still Steve as president, but they created a different
CEO.
structure
CEO.
to look over, just like, I guess, the red tape of it, the bureaucracy of leading a supporters group, independent, nonprofit type of deal.
Just,
So
I mean, so many different supporters group in that same section. I mean, you see it in other leagues where there's multiple, but in the main section is the one group,
Yeah.
and the other smaller groups are scattered in different smaller sections. So I'm very curious to see how that's gonna work out. Are they all gonna sing the same songs? Chavos and locals were kind of managing it. You would hear the local songs louder because more people knew them than the Chavos songs. But what's gonna happen there when the Chavos and other groups and the Dago Boys or something want to have that whole barra experience of banging drums, jumping and singing instead of the sha-la-la, instead of that, and they want to sing in Spanish and stuff like that. But now the Riptides and locals want to do something completely different. I think it's gonna be very hard, and I think that's what's going to suck. They're not gonna figure it out in a year, and I think once LAFC is going to be the home opener for San Diego FC. It's gonna happen, and people from LAFC are gonna come down, and it's not gonna be the best look.
That's what you're competing against. Like, I just put this one just because it's such a cool
And
concept.
it took years to get to there.
It took
years.
And I saw it. I had never gone to an LAFC game. The one LAFC game I went was the preseason match against San Diego Loyal. Preseason match. And the 32-52, that whole entire section came out. They were spread out. But as soon as I heard them hit the drums, I was like, I get it. Like, I get why they're top dog. I get why they're so good. Even the Open Cup match, transition a bit, against LA Galaxy that the Loyal had, that section, even though there was 2 warring supporter groups in that match, those 2 independent supporter groups were so much louder and borderline scary. Like, it's good, like that type of like, ooh, like
I've wanted, like, to be honest, my favorite supporter group of all time is Phoenix Rising, and like I say that as somebody that was like probably to this day is still they hate my guts.
Yeah.
But that to me is like what I want out of a supporter group, where like you walk over there and you're like, oh shit,
you're not in friendly
This is
territory.
scary.
Yeah.
This shit's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully that edge is there. And how it's going to be built.
Is that San Diego though?
No,
And I think it
San
was.
Diego's not scary.
Excuse you.
San Diego is not scary. I mean, Tony,
Hey, stop,
you may be scary,
stop,
but
stop.
San Diego's
Hey,
not.
They're loud, but
Not
not
proud.
proud. Or proud, but not loud.
Man,
that's-
they haven't changed that, huh? But anyways,
I think it's too late. But I think that they learned their lesson with that, and I hope that's something that the locals, the Riptides, the Chavos,
but that's something really
Battalion-
cool that you would get to see in the Open Cup. You would get to see supporters groups from the USL going up against MLS supporters groups,
Yeah.
which is super dope.
Yeah,
And not only that, these USL supporter groups can learn a thing of too, because I mean you have bigger audience when it comes to MLS.
Oh yeah.
But that's the beauty of that Open Cup, which I mean I knew you were bringing in the segue. So you guys want to dive into Open Cup?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I mean, and just one last thing with Loyal, like it's going to be something that's going to be referred to again, just because it was such it was a trauma bonding experience for everybody, and I think that the 3 of us sitting here have our own experiences, our own kind of views on what ended up happening, but I think it was just a net positive overall, and there's no way that San Diego Wave and San Diego FC, whatever success they each have, it cannot be understated that San Diego Loyal had an impact in that, and that's just what the
100%.
vehicle was.
Yeah.
And rest in peace. Thank you, Andrew Vasiliadis, for spending your own money on that. Like,
Yeah.
guy didn't have to. Guy didn't have to do any of that. And I think it's like a Tony Khan in AEW, where it's like it's at the end it's a guy. It's living out a dream, and he's doing things his own way, and I have to be immensely thankful for his involvement in that. Like, that shit was fun. That shit was fun.
I mean, for all the love the late Peter Seidler gets from the Padres, I feel everything I hear about him, and I never met him, but you just hear the stories. I honestly, I immediately think of Andrew, because that's who he is, and that's who I think really resonates in this town, because I think this is, I mean, I think any fan base really wants to see the owner and everything like really embody the club and really care and love the city. But it's like, there's, and not focusing on the times that Andrew was crying, but like, the times he would be on the pitch before a game talking to the crowd and, would get choked up.
Yeah.
And it just meant everything to him. And I think that's what you maybe don't get when you get into the billionaire level of owners. But I think there's room for, like say somebody like Ricardo Campos or
Ferro's very active. with the Will Ferrell with the LFC.
Yeah, no,
He's
that's
very
true.
active.
That's true. But I mean, to that point though, I'm like, I guess because he's an actor, I'm like,
Yeah.
does he really?
Yeah.
like,
Exactly. You
Is
know,
he
that-
really
I
love
get
it?
what you're saying.
But he is active, to your
Yeah.
point, and you see, even like where I think Matthew McConaughey might be like
Yeah.
a minority owner of Austin, but like
Yeah.
he's there, and you can tell
They're
he's
not
into it.
going to quote your tweet and give you praise on something you say about their club because they're not going to see it. They're not going to quote a picture of him on goal saying like, "Whoa, man!" Like where he's standing, this and
That's
that,
true.
and that's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that
yeah.
Andrew would
Game
give
recognizes game.
But yeah, that like I think that's what I hope for. Even as like Wave and SDFC evolve is do not underestimate that impact, from the top people. And I will say, I think, for all the events that I would go to with SDFC, and, I remember photographing some of it, and like a lot of their leadership was in those little areas where the supporters were popping
Yeah.
smoke. And, I know they all wore Cowboys hat, like,
Yeah.
like that. So like, I do give credit to SDFC, like for, not really having any game atmospheres yet. The atmospheres they have had, their, leadership team has been out front and forward. I think on Wave's side, I think Jill Ellis is probably, maybe not that rah
Yeah.
type,
No,
but like,
100%.
but like,
You can see
I think if she would open up to that, I think like, cause she has a lot of, like fire and tenacity. I remember after, I think, a playoff win, like, like she saw me and she came running over and she was hugging everybody. And it's like,
Heck yeah.
and that's where I'm like, show that more to the fan base, because like that really, especially in a town like this that has gone through the crap that they've gone through,
Yeah.
and Chargers leaving, all that stuff, like that to me, I think, and to your point about how you can't tell the story without San Diego Loyal, I think San Diego Loyal really picked up the pieces of a shattered kind of heart for a lot of San Diegans, and was like, oh, this is what this can mean. This is what it can feel like. So I think for me this year, it's like there is something missing, because I'm missing that element. Like I felt that. I remember going to the last couple games with Loyal, and I was reminded, because I had been away, so I really had forgotten the connection and it was like, I saw the connection in year 1 and year 2, and then to go back and see like the special connection that Elijah Martin made with all these like fans,
Yeah.
or Guido. And I remember there's a photograph that the KC from the Tribune took of Guido, and it like he's crying, and I think
yeah.
his wife's hugging him, but then
Yeah.
like all these fans. And I asked him, I was like, I thought that was his family. He's like, no, these kids would just come to every game, and they would be wearing my jersey, all this stuff. So I think that's the element of I hope, I think there's some people over now at Wave that came from Loyal that I think can really add some of that stuff that, I'm not going to call it missing from Wave, but I think, a Weston Bray he's a unicorn.
Yeah.
And I think he's somebody that his passion for this city and this sport and the connections it can have an effect on other people in the front office. I've had, a couple conversations with Shannon McMillan since she's gone over there. And
Yeah.
I think the great thing about Shannon is, and I'm guessing this is sort of like her competitive spirit as a player too, is like, like I'm laughing, but like she is ready to like rally this town
Just to
around,
go to
or, yeah,
war.
like,
Yeah,
and it's
100%.
just like, yo, like we're coming. And I know she brought over, some of the people at Loyal that worked with her and doing a lot of the good work. So I think some of that stuff that Loyal was doing will be picked up by Wave. And it'll be great, because I don't think Wave was in a spot where they really had a built out team that could focus on just strictly community relations, on all this stuff. So that is sort of hopefully the torch that carries on from Loyal is some of those people that have that Loyal blood, like you guys said. It's like you guys have it, and I think there's enough people in the city that have stayed in the city and are working for both teams that can inject some of that special sauce that I think Loyal
Wave is in good
will
hands
have.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Really good hands.
breathing in that soul, right? Because the vessel was there. The vessel is there for San Diego Wave. The mechanics are there, but just breathe a little bit of soul and just add a little bit of seasoning and pepper, and it's going to be great. To your point, right? Like, yeah, there's still bits and pieces of San Diego Loyal. Thinking of Ray, you know,
Yes.
who's working and elevated San Diego Loyals.
Yeah, she did.
I don't even know her department, her job was to do, and what she did was great with what she had to work with, and that's also recognizing that you didn't have a lot to work with, and it's a different kind of set of rules. But even then, like the genuine person that they are, just being able to tell that story and understand and be like, yes, like I have to be at these events, I have to be at these cool and capture these moments and showcase the community. I think Ray is somebody who really kind of understands that as well. And so that's not to say, oh, just Wave is gonna. They are here, they're in the town, and I really hope that they're gonna be the custodians that are gonna do good for the soccer community and let everybody else know, like, no, like, please take your time. Like, this is different. This city's different. And that's really what it is. If they can harness that, I don't think like San Diego FC doesn't have the finger on the button of what it is exactly right now, but they're on the pathway. And if they listen to people who have been here, who understand the community, who understand what they have, and I think they are through these Chrome Ball tours, that's going to be really where, all right, you're going to have a chance to tap into something that maybe Loyal didn't have, maybe Wave can't have yet.
Yeah, I mean, resources go a long way. I mean, I often say this. I go, I'm sure when Ray came into Loyal and looked through, you know, the video that I was taking in year 1 and year 2, she was probably like, oh my God, you know, but like, you know, I was like, the camera I had wasn't a video camera. It was a photograph camera, but like I knew the power of video was going to be much better than taking still photography for, you know, especially the COVID year when nobody could come to games and you only lived through the broadcast. So in my mind, I was like, well, let's try to, as much as I can, because right at that time I was one of 2 people from the front office allowed around the team. Jesse Beltran was the other, and he was doing marketing and PR, and then I was doing video, photo, social, and like we try to sort of create that like documentary style. But do I think like I'm a Martin Scorsese? No. And I think like that's the great thing about when Ray came in, and I think the special thing about somebody like Ray is in sports, there's people that go to write a Chrome Ball tour event and will say, hey, you know what? We'll get some photos of the games. We'll get some photos of, you know, the fans here. We'll post it, and, you know, it'll be a pretty generic caption. And I think the cool thing that you're seeing out of what they're doing, and I think, right, she's got a pretty good team there too. I believe Isaac is one of the video people who was at New Mexico United.
Oh, okay.
And like they were known in USL Championship as having great content too. And like every time they go to these Chrome Ball things, within a couple days or sometimes even sooner, they're posting like a voice from the community. And it's just that, to me, I'm just like, that is the difference between people that are just going through the motions and like this is just a job. Because that does, I would say, a large majority of people in sports just do that.
Yeah.
And like, let me just knock it out. I don't want to work that hard. And I think that is something that I give San Diego FC, especially Ray, a lot of credit. Because like, yeah, you can tell everything she did at Loyal had a lot of, you could tell there was a lot of thought behind it, a lot of planning. And she also like knew how to use her skill set and then like enhance it.
Yeah.
And that's the cool, rare talent. So especially, as they get closer to the season, it's going to be really interesting because I think, to your point, and to put a bow on that San Diego FC, like, to me, I think the thing that I would love to see is that rich storytelling from the academy. Because then, right, you get that kid who makes a debut and you hopefully, you know, did some interviews with that person along the way that you can tell this story from when they first got there. And it's like, hey, we can tell this story from literally the first training session. And that's something that, not diving too much into the future plans of what Wave's doing on their end to develop what they're developing. But, you know, I've talked to the people that are really kind of like the, I guess, like, for lack of better terms, like talent scouts for getting, I say, like, the next Mel B to come to Wave. And I'm always like, let me know when you're doing these, because I would love to come out there and capture content. And then I think, right, having those relationships and you get that trust, and that's what it really takes. But I'm like, yeah, because I think, you know, I used to do that in the G League with the Lakers. It's like, and we had guys that would get the call up, and then we're like, hey, we have this treasure trove of content.
Yeah.
and we can't wait to make something with it. And it's like that's the stuff you see go viral, and that's the stuff that I feel like brings more attention nationally to the teams.
Oh yeah.
It's organic.
Yeah.
Like that's literally as simple as it can be, right? Like the forming of the narratives, the forming of the storylines, like that's all it is. It's the forming of it. But the natural just storyline that comes through it, that's what people are compelled by. Like that's what really, you can have a 3-minute story. Like that's why the opening for Up is so,
Fantastic.
just brutal, because that's an entire beginning, middle, and end. And you just get in that nice little kind of, hey man, look,
He's going from wrestling to Up tonight.
I know.
I still watch The Lion King and hope Mufasa makes it. All right, so this is the time. Brother, help me. He's gonna help him up.
It hits home for him because he never had a brother. So
Do you have a Lion King reference to what's happening to the Open Cup?
So
MLS is Scar.
I was
yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And then, I mean, eventually he's going to get their comeuppance because the Hyenas are just the USL teams and just all these MLS teams that want to actually participate. And Don Garber is Scar. Maybe. Yeah.
Don Garber is Scar.
Zazu is still John Oliver. I actually enjoyed the live action interpretation of that. So
who's Pumbaa?
Pumbaa. So he needs a sidekick in all of this. Ed the hyena, that's like kind of Alexis Lawless.
The one with like the weird eyes and the tongue hanging out.
Yeah, that one, Alexis Lawless.
That's fantastic.
I'm never going to be invited on this podcast. I'm closer
Mufasa.
to.
It's okay.
Mufasa is the Open Cup on its own.
Oh,
It's okay. I'm okay with those Lawless references. Clearly, he took exception to me calling him out for
that's right.
that tweet. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you speak to?
Was this the Fresno native you called to give you the taco place?
No, it was
no,
just. It was.
he
it was
picked Jesse, which like.
Oh shit! He took
And,
offense right now. He's
I'm
"You
taking
picked
offense
Jesse."
because I'm going, Jesse, man, you grew up there and like you didn't even give this guy like the spots to go to. Like I lived there for 2.5 years, but then again, like my boss, when we did these taco truck throwdown events at the minor league baseball stadium, like we would go. He'd be like on a Friday night, he'd be like, all right, we're gonna drive around, and we just drive around. So I'm like, I don't know if Jesse ever did that, but
To be fair, like he did say that taco trucks are different, and so I did tell him, hey, I'm on my way to Yosemite today. I'll be back in a week. And he's like, okay, you got to go to the Doghouse. Cool.
a Doghouse Grill, yeah.
Oh,
Tri-tip.
Doghouse Grill, tri-tip, had exactly that.
It's all right.
And I realized like, oh, this is just a college bar that has decent food.
Yeah.
But it's not revolutionary, and it's not, the tacos weren't
Oh, Jesse.
all that. It's all good. We'll do a redo. But all right, so I think we've pussyfooted around the Open Cup just because it's like there's so much cool things to talk about here in San Diego that could take the whole time.
And when we talk about the Open, what is there, right? I mean, it's really just the MLS playing big bad guys saying, hey, we don't want to play in this because we have too many other tournaments that we created.
Yeah.
Well, and right, that I think the primarily overall theme is right. The Open Cup's not making money, like right. There's no big broadcast partner.
No.
That like if there was like, hey, ESPN's like, hey, we're gonna put these open round games on ESPN2 or FS1 was like, hey, we're gonna put it on FS1 and FS2. Right, most of these games were on like Bleacher Report Live or ESPN Plus at most.
Some people would watch an IG stories live.
Right, and then I remember years and years ago, like these MLS teams. I think LAFC once hosted Fresno Fuego or Fresno FC, and it's like barely anybody shows up. But like I think that's where I always we talked about this a lot where and I think in year 3 I was really angry at Loyola because I'm like, host this freaking put into host. I know it's gonna cost money, but like to me, there's just so much value in let the lower division clubs host the higher division clubs, and then if you want to turn that to where then the if you get to the final stage and then it's a choice if the MLS club wants to host or not. But like I just think watching Sacramento Republic win at home against who was that they played
Orlando. They lost
in
Orlando.
penalties. but I forgot
Kansas City, maybe? No.
maybe. But like just watching that game, and I think that was like one of the core soccer memories that is still in my head of them winning in PKs and that guy, like floating the ball over the keeper's head. And it's just like that to me is so cool. I remember being with Fresno Fuego when they were still a PDL team. And I think the first year of Sacramento Republic, and we went up there to play them in the Open Cup. And, it was very Fresno to come up there and be like, yeah, hey, we're gonna come in. And I remember like we legitimately had a thought that we were going to beat Sacramento Republic, and I think we got a red card in I think the first 10 minutes.
Cross that dream.
Yeah, and then the dream was over. But just saying that from the lower level club, and I feel like I'm somebody that's always loving the underdog element, so I love being with teams that are sort of that. But you live for those moments, and the cool factor of even to go play a brand new USL championship club when you're a PDL team and I remember talking to our GM at the time, and I think he was saying like, I don't know if Elijah Martin was available for that, but like there were guys that had played for Fuego years ago that would come in. I remember this guy, Milton Blanco, and he was older, but he came back to play in the Open Cup because it meant so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're losing in this is like as we all know, I think the fans are losing out, but I think MLS is really losing out because if they really want to ascend the league here, I think they have to realize they still need to, pat the little brother on the back or just, like take him out for the experience.
Yeah.
And like if it's a revenue situation thing, like then figure out what time in the calendar that this is going to work. But also, and I know some of this is like playing surfaces and worrying about like, oh, we don't want them going and like, I get that. But, like if Fresno at Chansey Park, a baseball stadium, can host a friendly between the LA Galaxy and San Jose Earthquakes, and both Landon Donovan and Wondolowski play, like, and that was a shitty surface.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember Landon played 60 minutes in that game, and there was, I don't think it sold out, but I think there was almost 10,000 fans at this preseason friendly that I remember. And at that time, it was, I think it was 2013. And to fans, that felt like we were hosting the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. It's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing. And it's the biggest. And I think that's the issue you said in the beginning. It doesn't make money, but it makes storylines. It makes organic storylines.
You get those Kyle Adams moments.
Were you there for that Kyle Adams goal at the watch party?
No, I was watching at home.
Yeah, like that was cool.
Yeah.
That moment was cool. Like regardless of where you're watching it, and like this is this feeling, right? Like this is a European thing, but this is. Have you seen this? This is
I think it's a fifth division
team in France.
I haven't seen this.
Finding out in their version of the Open Cup that they're going to go ahead and play against Paris Saint-Germain. This is a draw, literally like Selection Sunday.
That's amazing. That's what this is about.
They're
what
gonna
it should
have
be about.
PSG coming to their stadium. You're gonna have Mbappe coming to score 6-7 goals on you. But you're happy and excited because you're going to play the best team in France. And that's what, I mean, a lot of people are putting that in social media, right? It's the Open Cup magic. And it really is a thing where you get those moments of, man, the underdog could really make an impact. And MLS is putting the excuse, Don Garber's putting the excuse, well, we have scheduling conflicts with the Leagues Cup, the Conca Champions, and this and that. You don't even have to send all your teams. You already don't. You don't send a few. You don't have to point out, oh, we're gonna send our MLS next teams. And like you're already playing your youngsters. That's what all the teams across the world do. Until you get to the quarterfinals, then you start playing a few more starters and you start taking more seriously. And yes, you do that.
It almost makes me wish that, and like the U.S. women's national team was fighting for equal pay and they were just like housing people, right? 13-0, 8-0, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like this makes me hope that a USL championship team just beats one of these MLS next teams 10-0.
Yeah.
And like and then like go on, in a media availability and like call that out. Because I think that is what to me, as somebody that I feel like is still, I'm like in kindergarten of my soccer fandom, so it's still new to me. But I think I get more hyped for like seeing when Loyal went to Starfire to play Sounders, and and tied the game and took it to extra
Insane.
time, and I was like, I was more into that game than any MLS game. Like, I can't remember the last time I was like super into watching an MLS game. I think it was probably when Miguel Berry was playing for Columbus Crew and was scoring goals.
Yeah,
or or Rubin was playing, and and I get it if somebody's like, oh, well, that's because you started there and you don't live in one of these MLS markets. But I'm like, I think there's still like that ego element of like a USL League One or USL Championship team coming to an MLS market and the MLS fan being like, these little peons, they think they have a chance or whatever. But like,
and then they do, and they win.
Yeah.
Or they don't. And guess what? It's fun because your supercar team won 7-0.
And my thing is, if you're an MLS club and you want to play in the tournament, because that gives you a chance to rotate your squad. It gives a coach a chance to see, you know what? This kid has been killing it at training. I can't afford to play him against LAFC because it's a very important game and we need the 3 points, and I can't risk that yet. But on Wednesday, we're playing Louisville from the USL. You know what? This is a perfect chance to see what he's got. I'm going to give him 75 to 80 minutes in this game. Turns out he's a freaking beast. You play him in the next game in the MLS, he scores 2 goals. Like, it's a chance for players like this. Like, you're going to mention Xavi.
Xavi Nalari got the confidence to score those 2 goals in the Monterrey Miracle, and one of the, if not the greatest, just series of happenings in San Diego Loyal history.
Because he played so
against LAFC.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got the chance to meet to put himself at the level of Chiellini, a World Cup winner, or just a world dominator of a defender.
To play against Dortmund.
Evan Conway hit him in the nuts during that game. Like, it's like, these are the storylines that really just make those heroes and make your heroes seem like regular people, because they're in awe. They're seeing the bright lights and like, I'm part of this team. And there are implications to this too. MLS not being part of the Open Cup, if that's the thing that they're going to go ahead and do, FIFA requires you to be recognized as a FIFA, standard league. You have to have involvement in a tournament that involves all tiers of soccer. So if that's going to be something that they move forward with, then it's going to be a question of, well, what is FIFA going to do to excuse that? 1, 2, what's going to be the real life? Will FIFA take that away and say, all right, well, you need U.S. soccer, you need to have this, and then that just means that MLS gets exiled from that, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Thinking, man, God damn it, USA ruining shit again.
Yeah, and it's not. This is not a good look for a country that's going to be hosting the World Cup. Everything's already kicked off. All the marketing, everything is kicked off for 2026 here in the U.S. And they just keep shooting themselves in the foot. And this messy, shiny car is the coolest toy that you've had in ever.
The fact that the MLS in their little promo cartoon picture had Cincinnati with their shield, and then they had who won the Columbus Crew with their trophy of winning the whole thing. They didn't have Houston with the Open Cup in that thing. They had him just like standing there. And everyone was calling it. I was like, oh, wow, look, you don't even include the Open Cup in your little promo because Houston won last year. I don't know. It's not a good look. And I think it's, like you said, it's going to backfire. They're going to end up participating, I think.
I mean, I just hope that, as we were talking about it before we hit record, I just hope the USL takes it as an opportunity to just really keep that engine going. Hopefully have somebody like ESPN Plus, because I think at least that is more universally available and a decent broadcast, because I think you're even seeing it with this
Conca Champions.
Like the broadcast quality is not very high. It's usually a single broadcaster, and it looks like it's not even HD quality cameras, and so it's like, if this is
TVX does a better job.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going, like, okay, MLS, like, you're okay with this. You're okay with going and sending a team from Orlando all the way up to Canada to play a team that I had never heard about, which is like, in a way, I'm like, it's kind of cool. I was trapped in a hotel room, so I was like, this is fun to watch. You know, I watched Philadelphia beat, can't even remember who they beat, but they won 3-2 in a game.
Saprissa.
Saprissa.
Yeah.
Where are they from?
Costa Rica.
Deportivo Saprissa,
Okay.
yep.
Like I was like, that was cool. That was an entertaining game. But I think I'm like, if you're gonna value that over valuing growing the sport in your own country by going to play, right, Louisville, or like even thinking to Loyal, right, when they played Galaxy, didn't Chicharito come into the
Yeah,
game?
he did.
Yeah,
He did.
He did. Second
like-
half.
Dude, you had Real Esteli, a Nicaraguan team, beating Club America, current defending champions of Liga MX. They won the first leg 2-1, and then America ended up beating them 2-0 in the second leg. But
It's like a
you have those teams doing that.
Yeah, it's like a Nicaraguan team going up and beating the Houston Astros and the Yankees. Like, it's just like, what?
yeah.
What? Excuse me?
But that's why I'm like, if this was a baseball version, I'm like, I'd much rather see like the, you know, AAA team of the Astros go and like beat the Major League Baseball team of the Astros, and like that to me is what I think which I think is like such an American sports, like we love the underdog, and why is MLS basically putting
exception?
being like, well, we don't really care to dive into that storyline anymore, because I find it fascinating. Like when I would look at the matchups and I'd be like, I never heard of this team, and then it would be like a NISA team, or it'd be like, you know, a League 2 team, and then and you would always hear like Union Omaha the other year, League 1, right? They were, I think they beat like 2 teams, and we're going to play an MLS team. Didn't they beat an MLS team?
I think they made it to there.
Was it last year?
Yeah, I know they lost to an MLS team, I think, in the end. But I feel like you always have a USL Championship team that gets to like the Final Four. You know,
Yeah, no, 100%.
typically.
Yeah, and that's a great representation of it, right? Like it's really just showcasing that ladder is there, and I think that's the major difference. It's just the hesitance of U.S. soccer is just creating that relegation ladder, right? Because that used to exist in Mexico too. You have Cruz Azul and Cruz Azul Hidalgo, which is literally the team A, team B, and there was a chance that the second team could be promoted into the first division. So then that's going to create some very interesting kind of takes, but that's not something that the Americans saying. The American way of thinking of sports is so ingrained, going back to their wacky ass playoff format last year. I don't know why.
I couldn't keep track of it, to be honest. It confused me.
It was too long. There's you win a game, you know, and then you win the series, but then goals don't count. You can lose 7-0 first game, it doesn't matter, because the next game you win 1-0 and it's the same victory on the win column. Like I don't know. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why go so against the grain to try to be so new, and they get mad when people shit on you because you're like, oh, it's soccer. Like, no, you're acting like soccer. Like, if you want to be and act like football, then be football. Like, follow those rules, but then don't be mad when you get looked down from everybody. Oh, the Europeans don't think we're this. Everybody else is such gatekeepers of soccer. No, you're your own gatekeepers. You're the ones that keep shooting yourself in the foot. If you go as you do with the rest of the world, it'll pay dividends. That's exactly what happened when Jurgen Klinsmann took over the U.S. men's national team. He came in and was like, all right, I'm a great German player, former great German player. I know what it takes. We need academies. We need to have this restructured from the bottom all the way to the top. It has to be a similar play style. Go. He started building that. You're seeing the dividends of those youngsters in Christian Pulisic, in DeAndre Yedlin, in the people who are coming in now, Way. Just that's the result of what was implemented back then, which was what the rest of the world was doing. Guess what? It works. It does work. If it works in little old England with 200 teams and 7, 8, 9, 10 divisions, it's going to work in the United States and even regionally, right? And I think that's going to be it's a different conversation how to restructure everything. On the other side, and this is what I will give Don Garber. Don Garber got a league that was about to go bankrupt and had 12 teams. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar league that has 30
30 teams.
32 teams come, like, just they're gonna go to like
Yeah.
32. That's not bad. I'll give him credit for that. Roger Goodell, same for the NFL. Look at what he's done with the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the best leader. Talking about best leaders, look at the WWE.
But at one point you get at one point you get outdated, right?
Yeah, and you have to go but see, you have to evolve and go with the times.
And if you
And
can't,
I'm
then
I'm not one that likes that, but you have to do it in a smart way that's organic to the game itself. You can't. This is why I don't like anything that's skews from the game. Like in baseball, like what I like about baseball is you can get somebody's stats from 1905 and look at somebody's stats from 2005 and be like, these two played the same sport. Yeah, sure, they didn't play it against any type of Dominicano players, but it's essentially the same sport, like the batting averages, and you can compare those things throughout. Now, you really can't compare Messi scoring almost 100 goals in a calendar year because there weren't that many games back in 1950-something with Maradona, with Pelé playing. Maradona didn't have to do that. Like, that wasn't available. But if you fundamentally change the actual stats of the game, if your playoff stats count in different ways, because in game 1 you did this, in a series in game 2 you did that, and you have 3 games to define one series, that's just stat padding. You're gonna have records broken. You're gonna have all that, and that's just different. So I think, yes, adapt, but stay true to the sport. I feel.
Okay.
So, cool.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, just to go back to League One team, they ended up beating El Paso in the round 2, and then they lost. But it was Pittsburgh who went all the way over to the quarterfinals. They
Riverhounds.
ended up beating Columbus Crew,
New
who
Charlie
were the champions. Charlie just taking over the USL now, but
That's right. They dropped kits with Pittsburgh. I saw that.
aren't they're dropping for
I think they have a couple.
Oakland too, right?
Yeah,
they got a
Oakland's,
couple
yeah.
deals with different teams now. Loyal.
Good on them. Another thing that Loyal
Paving
started.
the way
Look at
for
that.
them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very true. But yeah, I mean, I just think that when you rip away that underdog element here, and there was a kind of dialogue I would hear a lot from people in soccer, and they would always complain about Wrexham and be like, "Oh, why do people care about Wrexham? Like care about your own team
story.
here locally?" And I'm just like, it's the same reason why I love watching the Sunderland series on Netflix. And right, they only dropped 3 episodes, and I was like bummed that it was only 3 episodes this season. But it's just that element. I'm like, the storytelling is so rich, and I don't care that this is a 3rd division team, but like, you're right. Like that idea of what it means to get back to the championship, level for them, or, and just having that element. And I think that's where, to me, there wasn't enough resources, or, when you're at the MLS level and the content team, and it's like, yeah, like if there is that player that's getting to play for the first time that doesn't typically play, like, why aren't we asking the soccer staff if we can mic him up? Or if we can tell his story because we know he's going to play. Like these were all things, like when I would go to Loyal training, I would pay attention to like what the set pieces were and everything. And I still remember going to, against Real Monarchs in that first year, the first game we restarted, and I got to be in the room and I'm filming Nate Miller talk about what they're going to do with set pieces and that they're going to switch out who's kicking it. It's going to be Jack Metcalf on the corner. And then I'm in the right spot. And then all of a sudden it develops, and then we share that meeting, and it was like exactly how we drew it up. And Sporting had the trust to be like, yeah, hey, you can share it, just make sure you don't like show the diagram or whatever. And I'm like, but I feel like when it comes to Open Cup, like these MLS teams, they're just like, oh, we don't care, because like nobody in like maybe above them is also being like, oh, well, like we're not going to pour a lot of resources into this. It's sort of like,
there's no incentive.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with the NWSL and why the Challenge Cup just kind of died as a midweek thing, because it's just like you weren't going to pour any marketing resources really to get people there, because you're like saving it for the weekend games that matter. But even just having that dialogue to be like, oh, well, like, yeah, these Challenge Cup games really don't matter. So you come into it already taking your foot off the gas, but in the meantime, you can be like, well, man, like for an example, like Sierra Engie is going to play.
Yeah.
And she's maybe going to get her first minutes. And, people would be like, "Oh, well, it's a Challenge Cup; it doesn't matter." But I'm like, tell that to the player that gets to play for the first time.
And actually, I reached out to Wave to get Sierra coming up after Coachella because we talked to her before her debut, and our question, I think we talked about a little bit, like what's going to be that moment when you debut? What's going to go through your head when you score your first goal? All of that happened, and so now I want to see and follow up. Hey, after a year, what was it actually like?
And show her like her response. This is what you told us literally over a year ago.
That'd be great. And like that to me is the storytelling that
Exactly.
that you're losing by not allowing this open cup really to exist. I think it's the same reason why I just laugh when people, like in America say like, oh, why do you care about a Wrexham team? Why do you care about? Because I'm sorry, they figured out the storytelling and they just lean into it and they dive in and they don't care who they're playing when. Like they make it into something that you can care about. And I would agree. Like, I think that's the one thing that is disappointing, I think, sometimes on the American scale is like we leave too much to like, oh, we're playing this team. So like, it's not like that big of a deal. Like we'll wait till we have like, I'm not saying Wave does this or whoever does it, but it's like, I think there's that thought. And to your point, like I see Sierra now and like, they were doing a team activity last night that I got to film. And for being only in year 2, like she is universally loved on that team. And like, she's a really fun personality. And I love that you guys obviously cared to interview her last year. Cause it's like right on the media element, you could be like, oh, well, say the team's only going to give us, the backup keeper, or they're going to give us the other rookie that's not playing yet. And like, you guys could be like, no, we're going to wait out for like somebody else. And it's like, you guys are doing that. And that's the difference between right now that paid off. Like one more Sierra story at this community event the other week. She was on like this little panel with Naomi Girma, I think Danny Colaprico maybe, and somebody else. And, and the kids were asking, they're like, who scored the most goals last year of like who's up there, and it was Sierra. Like and she's like even laughing herself. She's like, it was like me. Or like they might have asked Naomi like how many goals you scored, and she was like, well, none. And then
I completed the most passes on the team actually.
But it was like Sierra's like, I scored 2, and she's like laughing while she's saying it. It's like, but you don't know, like I think that's the element that I'm not saying I've ever been perfect. I remember there was one time on the G League team, this guy that I think he averaged like 5 points a game at Boise State, and he was going to be the last guy that made the team. And he came to camp early because he basically had to try out to make the team again. And I was like, well, shoot, he's here. Like, why don't we just film him working out, and then we'll do an interview with him? And that story was our best performing story all season.
Wow.
And then it's like, right, when you think about it and break it down, you're going, it's this white no-name dude that like doesn't seem like he might even play basketball, and he's from the small town in Wyoming, but literally the entire like I think the state Facebook page shared the story.
The state of Wyoming's Facebook page.
Literally, no joke.
That's crazy.
No joke, because right, you can see like break down Facebook analytics, like it'll tell you who's watching it where, and like the amount of views in Wyoming, like this, it clearly went viral in Wyoming. And it was a good lesson to me of just like, we could have sat here and not done anything because we're like, well, this guy's not going to make the team. And to me, that was a turning point, especially that I try to apply at Loyal and literally everywhere, where it's like, never underestimate anybody's story. And also like, don't underestimate, and I try to do this, like, I try to put myself in the player's shoes where it's like their career might last a couple games or their career might last years, but somewhere down the line, this photo I get of them, since I do mostly photo now, I just think, and I'm like, man, they're going to love seeing this photo years from now. And like, I don't care if it's Alex Morgan or whatever. Like, my favorite thing after games is like seeing all the people that follow Alex and trying to get a picture of her and Charlie. And I'm like, that's cute and that's awesome. But also, like I try to remind other people that shoot for us, I'm just like, just make sure like you also care about,
you're spreading the love.
The 20th person on the team too, because even that person just even suiting up and not even getting in the game, and their parents are in the crowd and they didn't play any minutes, but they get to go walk over to their parents in full kit and give them a hug. Like that's a huge moment for them, and don't underestimate that. And I feel, bringing it back to the Open Cup, like we're taking away those moments for some of these players that play on a League Two, play on a NISA team, play on a USL Championship team, and like you tell even Charlie Adams, who grew up in England, like the games that are going to stick out to him, and he's going to be like, yeah, playing against freaking Galaxy, playing against these MLS teams that I got to play against. Like I feel like those are the ones that stick out. Or even I think I talked to Morgan about that, and he's like, I was on the freaking same pitch as Chicharito. Like, are you kidding me? And
yeah, we were there. We were like, we're covering Chicharito.
Yeah.
Like we were high-fiving each other in the press box. Like,
hell
dude,
yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah,
like,
and,
it's awesome.
and now you're gonna cover Ollie LaRaz on Colorado Rapids MLS
Hell
Pro.
yeah.
I love you, Ollie.
Shout out Oliver.
But I'm just saying, like, it obviously, when you do that, and I think that's just like that to me isn't even like a little jab from MLS and being like, oh, we'll put in our MLS Next Pro teams. It's like I just walked out of the ring and we could have done a face-to-face, but instead of saying anything, I didn't even grab a mic. I just said, you know what, you're not even worth my time. And I walked out of the ring and I walked backstage. And that to me is like how I feel about what MLS has done to the Open Cup.
That's a great way of putting that, actually. That's fantastic. I
really
love that.
is.
I love that. I mean, there's going to be a lot more space for this talk. And I think it's coming very, very naturally. I do appreciate that. Like it's not something that's necessarily forced and focused on one thing overall, but I think it's good to be able to have people who are honest in talking about what's actually happening, right? Because there's not a lot to report, and whatever is reported will be sent over on a media blast for everybody. But I think it's these stories and just knowing and identifying that these things are happening and wanting, because that's what people want, and identifying that people want these stories too, and giving the people the chance to ask for those. And I think that's what I hope people kind of take away from these conversations that we're having, is that you can demand those things. Like, ask those teams for those stories. Like, you have the power and you have the eyeballs and you have the likes, and you can really, be a needle mover and just, if it's something that's not being represented, that is not being represented, then say something about it. Same thing I've always looked at the supporter groups for. With Chavos and Loyal. If you see something and they're not doing it, then tell them. Tell them, because then what's going to happen is when they move on and they do something that you don't like, or, oh, we should have said that earlier, it's too late now. It's too late, and now you're going to be complaining about it instead of being proactive and really wanting to be that agent of change. And, hey, I want to see this. I want to see that. It's really holding them accountable for their promises of reflecting the city.
You have to.
And saying that they're about it, then be about it. And so I think there's still time for MLS in a year for them to do that. Wave, we'll see. It's a wait and see year, and I hope they're set up for success. And then everybody else, I mean, I don't know. Albion, rest in peace. I guess they're just kind of.
Hey, you didn't even talk San Diego Stalkers. And I mean, I shoot for the team, so I'm at the home games. But I mean, I obviously am leaving for a month, but I'll come back during playoffs. But to me, some of my favorite games I've ever covered in this city are San Diego soccer playoff
They're
games.
fun.
Yeah, they really are.
Even when they lose. Especially when they lose.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of my favorite photos were literally the
Chihuahua photos
of them celebrating, because you could just tell it how much it meant to them. And obviously, I remember taking a photo of Pardo when he was walking off the pitch, literally seconds after he gave up that goal. And I mean, kudos to him, because he actually stayed on the pitch. He went over to Chihuahua's whole huddle and like shook hands with him. So it was very pro. But I caught him in the moment of him just probably internalizing, like, I just gave up that goal. Yeah. And so I get him, and then he sees me taking a photo, and there's another photo of him just staring at me like, why are you taking my photo? And those are the uncomfortable moments, but like they're also, to me, the beautiful moments. And I mean, that's been the tough thing with, that's why I wanted to be there at those final Loyal games too.
Well, now they own the Sockers.
Oh, Chihuahua
owns the Sockers.
A lot more sad faces when based in Chihuahua. And hopefully that's not the case.
Yep.
You could find San Diego soccer action this Sunday.
There's
Kansas City.
There's the plug.
Boot scooting night. If you want to learn how to line dance, you can get a special ticket. Go to sdsoccers.com/special tickets. See, I can turn it on. It's fine.
Okay.
That's corporate me being able to just.
Can you do it in their Craig Elstein voice?
Kaylin Sheridan. I was waiting for Craig to give the goalkeeper Martinez for Costa Rica yesterday
man,
her props.
Hell of a game.
Vicky Martinez.
Big shout out to Carl for giving us this recovered drinks.
That's why I had to piss halfway. I drank way too many of them. I'm like, yep.
Tony's been drinking this since
I recovered well.
the Chrome Ball tour, and he's back in tip-top shape. So
I actually am.
This do work.
I don't hurt. I can get up and down from a
What's
seat.
in this?
I don't know. Sugar alcohol, I guess. Great stuff.
Bunch of vitamins, but yeah,
Literally says sugar alcohol. I thought you were kidding before.
it does say that. But
We'll find out what that is later in the test results and the blood work. It's
All right,
great,
man.
delicious. But I mean, is there something that we want to touch before we head out today? I think it's safe to say we'll have you back sooner and then just kind
This is
of
fun.
continue this.
I think the good thing about the next time we do this, we talked about bi-monthly, is obviously the games will kick off. I know I'll miss the first 2 Wave games, but come back and Soccer's will be in playoffs and Wave will be at that point, like what, 3-4 games in?
Yeah.
You know, so I think
you get a sense of what the season may
I
feel
think
like,
I think
so.
it'll be great to kind of
Awesome.
download from you guys what you guys have seen in person that I wasn't able to see, and I think too from a soccer standpoint we'll be able to kind of know what that Chihuahua series will probably look like.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm here. I have a conference in Houston for work. April 10th to the 12th.
So are you the backup then?
No.
On the
Absolutely
broadcast?
not.
He's
Nope.
not.
Absolutely not.
Ring up Nate Aburea.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
All right. I think it's a good place to end. Thank you for everybody who listened, because this is going to spark people's interest. It's going to hit. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but I needed to pique some interest and be like, okay, and hit that click. But thank you.
Our audience is very good at giving us names for segments and shows, so send us some names that you guys might want to call this.
Not Young Ones, the show with hot Ryans and even hotter Mikes.
I mean, I
Okay.
really like that name.
No, it's
but
not
it's a
gonna be that.
copyright name.
It's not. It's fine. It's a parody.
Supposedly the Sirens call me Handsome Ryan. I did not know this, but
Handsome
they told
Ryan.
me that I think the last playoff game they said, we have a nickname for you, and I had no idea.
Who's lying to you? No,
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm kidding.
yeah, to be honest, I don't like the word handsome, but that's just me.
All right. Well, catch more Handsome Ryan coming up. Thank you, Ryan, for coming in. And we're going to continue this. I really like this. And if there's just people who want to maybe do this live at some point, it's good. But I
Yeah.
like this also kind of safety net. Not that we ever edit anything out, because we really fucking
We
don't.
never don't.
Cool. We'll do it next
All
time. And I'll see what
We'll
that
see
brings.
you guys
good.
next time.
Thanks for listening.